Hello. Welcome everybody, and thanks very much for coming along to the Audit and Governance Committee meeting 28th of September. Thank you for joining in person and online if you're not able to be here. We're live webcasting today, so can I please remind members to use their microphones, turn off your mobile phone, turn your microphones off when you're not speaking, and let me do the same. Otherwise, we're going to get disturbed by someone or other. Now, onto the agenda. Okay, firstly, are there any apologies? Please, Media.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Birch and Councillor Yardy. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, great. Thank you very much. Okay, item 2, the minutes. So the proposal is that the committee approve the minutes of the meeting of the 27th of July, which you've had circulated. Are there any comments or questions about the minutes? Oh yes, Councillor Dennis.
It was just to say that was reference to Totnes Market and how it had been administered, and I believe I mentioned at the time whether we could incorporate Kingsbridge and Ivybridge markets into that as well.
Yes, that was asked, and I think it was answered, but I don't remember what the answer was, Councillor Dennis. So maybe someone can remind me, because we said in reply to that, someone did answer it. No, we don't know. We can't remember.
It was Councillor Birch.
Was Councillor Birch, and what did he say? We don't remember. So do we have Councillor Abbott available to comment on this? Because I think it's... No.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Okay, all right, so that's a no. Councillor Dennis, back to you.
I think it was just a case that in the audit report only Totnes Market had been referenced, whereas of course the District Council is responsible for free markets, so it was to include all of them.
Okay, can we add that note? Good point, thank you very much. Can we add that to the minutes then, please? Okay, Councillor Dennis, thank you. Any other comments on the minutes? All right, so then let's approve the minutes. Can I have a proposer, please?
I'll propose, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any seconder? Councillor Dennis. All right, all in favour? Unanimous, yes. Okay, me too. Okay, right, approved. Right, there are, I believe, no items of urgent business. So that's item 3. Item 4, division of the agenda. The division of the agenda will be applied to item 14, investment properties update and monitoring report, which is a confidential matter, or so we'll take that when we come around to that item. Okay, declarations of interest, item 5. Are there any declarations of interest from anyone from the Audit Governance Committee? No, not seeing anybody. Okay, brilliant. All right, thank you. No declarations of interest. Item 6, Grant Thornton External Audit Report, Progress Report and Sector Update. So we don't have Mr. Murray, I don't think, do we? So...
Chairman, sorry. We're just trying to contact Mr. Murray and just to check he's got the link into the meeting.
Right.
So, Chair, we could go on to item 7 and then come back to item 6. Oh, here he is.
Perfect timing, Mr. Murray.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Okay. Morning. Okay, Mr. Murray, we've just got to your item, so perfect timing. Thanks very much for joining us. And perhaps you could introduce the topic and give us an update, and then we'll open for questions. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Chair. And once again, thank you for letting me join remotely. I'm at a training conference today and tomorrow, so it wasn't possible for me to come down to Totnes today, unfortunately. So it's a fairly short report from us on the agenda today. It's a progress report based on activity that's happened since the last time that we spoke. I'm really going to focus on page 8, printed page 8 of the agenda pack. On the PDF, that's page 10, and it's entitled Progress at September 2023. So we have two statutory responsibilities, one in respect of the financial statements audit and one in respect of value for money, and we give a brief update on both of those responsibilities. In respect of the financial statements audit, we've previously discussed the timetable and the challenges that we had in terms of resourcing and completing the 22-23 audit. I won't go into that again in detail. Since we last reported to committee, colleagues have begun some high-level work on the draft financial statements that Mrs. Buckle and colleagues have produced and provided to us, and we've received responses to our requests for working papers and other supporting information where we've begun to make samples. And all of this is available on our document sharing software that we use throughout the audit. We've also discussed with Mrs. Buckle and colleagues a proposed timetable for the audit, recognising the challenges that we've discussed previously around key contacts being focused on budget preparation later into the year. We propose to begin our audit work in earnest. As I said, some has begun, but in earnest in November, running through to January 2024. And we've discussed with Mrs. Buckle and Mrs. Henstock the prioritisation of some of that work, bearing in mind the team's priorities and the areas that they look after. So team will begin in about a month or so's time and run through to January 2024. In respect of value for money arrangements, the detailed work on the council's arrangements for the 21-22 and 22-23 financial years is largely complete. And it's my intention that our joint and auditor's annual report, sorry, get my words out, which is the commentary on value for money arrangements for both financial years, will come to the proposed committee on the 7th of December this year. We've not identified any significant weaknesses in the council's arrangements from the work that we've completed, and the full commentary and report will be provided, as I said, in December. So that was the short update on where are we with our responsibilities and the proposed timetables. If we think about when would the audit findings report come to committee, given I said the work would run into January, looking at the work plan, and I appreciate that's a later item on today's agenda, that's flagged for the 7th of March 2024 in terms of our audit opinion and related documents. So the next two committee meetings, you'll receive value for money first and then financial statements at the next committee. The only other thing that I wanted to talk through briefly was over the page. As you're aware, acutely aware, there are significant delays in local authority audits. Centrally, government, DLUC and other regulators and bodies have been considering proposals to help address these delays. There are two proposals that I think would be of interest to yourselves. The first is in respect of an introduction of deadlines and what's being referred to as backstops for audits. So if audits are not finished by a certain point in time, the auditor finishes their work on that audit year regardless, potentially issues a qualified audit opinion and moves on. I think I want to be very clear with you that we are not proposing to issue a qualified audit opinion to South Hams District Council, and we are not proposing to use these backstop arrangements should they come into place. Given some of the timetables that are being discussed, our audit should be well complete before we would be enforced to do that. But other authorities who may be much further behind than yourselves may well find themselves being issued with qualified audit opinions in an attempt to catch up. As you can see on the slide, some audits go back to the 2015-16 financial year. The other changes then are in respect of the National Audit Office Code of Audit Practice. So that's the guidance that governs the work that we as external auditors are required to do. The key thing being discussed here is a change in emphasis, a change in requirements in respect of the audit work we need to do in respect of the pension liability and also non-investment property. So again, you've got a paper later on the agenda in respect of your investment properties. This wouldn't apply to those. This is your operational land and building. So for example, the building that you're sat in today. We spend, and this is no exaggeration, weeks, if not months, auditing those two numbers in your financial statements. And that also takes a significant amount of your officer time responding to those queries. The proposals are that the level of audit work is significantly reduced. And this should be one way to avoid getting into the delay situation that we find ourselves in currently. So I thought it's worth mentioning those to you today. As I said, they're both proposals at the moment. So until they come into force, for want of a better phrase, we continue under the current arrangements. But again, just to be clear, not intending to use the backstop. I don't think the changes for pensions and land and building valuations will be in place for the 22-23 financial year that we're auditing, but you may well see a shift in emphasis from the current financial year that you're in, the audit of 23-24 onwards. That's all I was going to propose to say and open up for questions at that point, Chair. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Murray. That's a very good update. And personally, I appreciate the clarity around the progress and the speed that you're making, and welcome the fact that you've said you're starting very soon, or starting in November, and will be finished, or at least the aim to be finished in January, and to report in March, and good progress on the value for money as well. So thank you very much for that. Are there any questions from members, first of all? Yes, Councillor Rake.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Murray. Just to, there are two things. One is the dates given in your projected dates. The other is the degree of confidence that you have in them. I have a sense that that's increased since the last time we spoke. Is that right?
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay, can you be more specific, Mr. Murray, I wonder, or Mr. Councillor Ray?
Apologies, yeah, that was a wrong time.
Satisfied me.
Oh, well, it satisfied you. All right, well, I mean, I guess if you could be more specific, I mean, are we certain that we're going to meet those dates, would be the way I would phrase it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So you're correct. I'm a lot more certain on the dates than I was at the last committee meeting when we had a discussion. The proposed team who will be completing the audit work are currently working on another audit engagement, but that is running as planned. As you can appreciate, a small delay in one audit then has knock-on impacts on all of the remaining plans. I think, as I've probably referred to previously, the closer we get to that proposed timetable, the more clarity and certainty I have. As I said, we as a leadership team, me and my colleagues discuss progress on all of our audits at least weekly, and the team who will be coming over to work on the Southlands West Devon audit, as I said, are on track to finish and therefore move to you in November. Whilst the team have been working on other audits, you may recall my colleague Oliver, Ollie Durbin, had joined some of these meetings previously. He had been progressing some of the work, some of the sample work for your audits in the background to allow the finance team to upload some evidence. So as I said, we have already got some sample evidence back from the finance team, which will be sat waiting for day one when the team switch on to this audit full time to pick up and take forwards. What I can never say in full certainty is by the end of January, this audit will 100% be complete, because you never know what you're going to find. There's a lot of work to get through between now and the end of the audit. But certainly that's what we're planning for. And certainly the March committee feels a realistic time for me to be reporting fully completed audit findings on the financial statements. And as I said, on the value for money side, I've already seen first draft of the detailed work that's been produced. So that's just going through internal quality review prior to me then sharing a draft report with management for any comment.
Okay, thanks very much. That's helpful. And maybe we could just ask you to keep in touch with the finance team here if you do see any concerns. That's probably going to happen anyway. Any other questions? Do you have any questions, Mrs. Buckle, or any? Oh, I'm sorry, there was one. Yes, okay, Councillor Bresswell. Yep. Yes, over to you, Anna.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Murray. Just clarification on the backstop audit. when would, it's unlikely for us, but when would that come into effect? I mean, how many years does it take for to worry and to get this implemented?
Sure. So through you, Chair, my understanding is it would require legislative changes to come into place. So the first question would be how quick could that be enacted? Some of the draft dates I've seen, and I think Mrs. Buckle and Mrs. Henstock may have also been party to some of this. For the year that I'm currently auditing, so 22-23, I'd seen a high-level proposed date of essentially this time next year, the end of September 2024. All 22-23 financial statements audits would need to either be finished or that would be the point at which you would stop. So that's why I said I'm not considering at all that this is going to be a requirement for South Hants West Devon, your neighbouring authority, because obviously the finance team produce those accounts as well. So when we're talking about your audit, we're actually talking about the audit of another council as well, because we do those concurrently. That's the proposal at the moment. That could obviously change, but that's the draft messaging that I'd seen and heard.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, any questions or anything from yourself and the finance team?
No, thank you, Chairman.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, so let's move the recommendation then that the Audit and Governance Committee notes the contents of the report. Is there a proposer? Yeah, Councillor Ray, Councillor Dennis as seconder. All right. All in favour? All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Murray. And I can understand if you want to drop off the call and go back to your training if you need to, or stay and listen if you think this is going to be more interesting.
I'll stay until about 20-25 past 10 because then I do need to move on.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you very much. Okay, let's go to the next item then. The item 7, update on the 2023-24 internal audit progress report and internal audit charter and strategy. So understand Councillor Brazil is going to introduce the report. Mr. Middlemass from the internal audit team, internal audit manager, is here to answer questions. So over to you, Councillor Brazil.
Thank you, Lee. Yes, so this report is pretty self-explanatory, I think. Within it, you will have seen that the reports that have been done are all of either substantial assurance, which is really what we want to get on everything, and then the rest are reasonable assurance. At the same time, and probably more importantly, we've got the plan, the forward plan of what we're expecting internal audit to progress during this next year, and that's, I think, where this committee in particular may feel that things should be added or taken away. Or some of them are probably statutory, so we can't take them away. But I think particularly if you think there are things that are missed here that you think internal audit should look at, then this would be the opportunity to do it. Having said that, I mean, we do that throughout at every meeting really. But as things come and go, you may feel that there are issues that you're concerned about. There are some questions myself that I think that this has posed. They're not necessarily to do with the audit, but I'll wait to hear what people have to say, and then I may come in later if that's all right, Lee.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. But you have posed a very interesting question for us to think about, and maybe we'll take your ideas on what we should add or remove. But firstly, let me, Mr. Middlemass, do you want to add anything to what you've heard and maybe give a bit more detail on where we are with this and help us understand the situation? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So Paul Middlemass from Devon Audit Partnership. So firstly, apologies because there are two items on there. Firstly, the progress update, and then secondly, the internal audit charter and strategy. But I see that the charter and strategy is not included in the papers.
Sorry, which strategy? I missed what you said. Those on
so the internal audit charter and strategy paper is not included in the papers from what I can see.
The charter and strategy document is missing, and the other point that's missing is
No,
the charter and strategy document is missing. Okay, right. So
sorry, I hadn't noticed that, Mr. Middlemouse. But yes, I can see it's not attached as the appendix. But...
So we will resubmit at the next meeting. But in terms of the first point, so the update report. So this is our standard update report for the committee. Just starting on page 16. So as you can see, we're looking at a reasonable assurance for the council for the year. Obviously, as you can see, this is supported by the number of reasonable assurances we've provided to date. In terms of the high-level messages of the audits that we've delivered, so and more specific detail is from page 19. You can see we've done 2 grant reviews, substantial and reasonable. In essence, continue to confirm that controls are in place to ensure grants are made correctly and safely to the right people and so on. Did an audit on insurance, so we think there's an opportunity for a more systematic approach to review and the claims being made by people, and consider how to actually prevent the accidents from occurring. And also to consider the actual cost of insurance versus what is paid out, so you get a sort of value or a opinion of whether the assurance provides good value. In terms of food safety, so so we are concerned that the food safety checks are not being met as outlined in the recovery plan. So as we understand it, the FSA is aware of this, and the business area has a plan to get back into conformance with the requirement to check restaurants and so on. Members, whether at this committee or other committees, need to consider really how they're kept informed by officers on how the plan is being undertaken. Although I might say, I think probably when we look at next year's plan, we'll probably include it as part of our audit plan for next year. Project management. So for larger projects, yes, a good systematic approach as we would expect, but perhaps less assurance that smaller projects follow the same sort of rigid or appropriate project management methodology. But in this regard, having a central register of all the projects that the council is taking forward would help monitor project delivery across the council. And then travel and subsistence. So we undertook this audit in conjunction with HR and the changes they're making to their policy. They and we agree that there's a need to improve line management oversight and control and sign off of actual claims being made, and we identified a few other things for the policy to pick up on. In addition, we also undertook a review on Devon Building Control partnerships, which members be aware this is a partnership that is covers 3 councils, yourselves, West Devon and Timbridge. We're quite impressed with the arrangements that the team have got in place, and quite strong management and leadership. I think most of the issues we identified about the IT support being provided by Strata on behalf of Timbridge, in terms of getting rid of legacy data on their systems, and also practice of accepting card payments by phone. So page 17 refers to our counter fraud resilience and assessment report. So we've helped to update core documents like the counter fraud strategy, which and those are being discussed at the next meeting. In terms of internal audit recommendation tracking, so members will know there's a paper later in the agenda on this, or next on the agenda, so it's good to see progress is being made on that. And then so delivery of a plan. I think good progress is being made in a number of areas. We are working with the business area on developing arrangements, controls, and so on, such as social networking, comms, and media, and so on, before we undertake formal audit. So that's sort of getting in early and informing, helping with the business area. And so Appendix 2, details where we are with the audit plan and all the specific audits. And as Councillor Brazil says, happy to take any comments about audits that need to come into the plan. But I might also say, obviously, we will shortly be focusing on creation of next year's plan. That will start from April 24. And then as a last thing, so I note that the flyer for the DAP member event on the 16th of November has been issued. So obviously, if you can attend, please do that. I think it's an opportunity for you to mix with other members from other councils, to talk to them and so on in Devon. So anyway, that was an update from me. So is there any questions?
Yeah, thank you very, very much. Firstly, I should apologise that we haven't got the internal audit charter and strategy circulated, and I think that was a mistake on our side, wasn't it? But so perhaps, we'll take that in the next meeting. So can we delete that from the recommendation then? We can't approve something we haven't seen. Okay. Councillor Dennis, please.
Yes, just 2 points actually. The first one, just a clarification, because we talked about, obviously in the September meeting, having that fraud resilience and assessment report, and in the document it says it's provided as a separate report in the September 2023 meeting. So are you saying that will be the next meeting now?
Yes, that's correct. I think the counter fraud manager, because of personal commitments, couldn't make this meeting, and I think we also decided the size of the agenda as well. So it was bumped again to the work's been done, so it's bumped again. I might say that we didn't identify anything of concern from the report. I think if we had identified that we had concerns, we'd have highlighted it before.
Councillor Dennis?
So just the second point was on page 17. It says Appendix 2 provides detail and delivery of the audit plan. Since the start of the plan, several reviews of grants have been undertaken at client request, which has taken resource away from the original plan. I just wondered what those reviews of grants were.
So I think two are, for instance, on pages 19, for instance, and so we do periodically get requests for grant work, but as I say, I don't think it's going to have a big impact for the rest of the year. And Lisa.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so that was at my request as the Section 151 officer, and these grant schemes were, the council was responsible for delivering the £150 rebate, which was around the energy scheme, and that was something which happened last financial year, and we have to do a lot of post-payment assurance around that. So BAYS, the government department that was responsible for administering that scheme, asked us for a lot of evidence around what were our procedures, and yes, we did use some internal audit resource to do that post-payment assurance testing, because it makes sense that we use our own internal resources for that. And yes, it's very pleasing to see that there was substantial assurance on the energy rebate scheme, the £150 discount. Obviously, that was a government initiative, but it did fall to us as the district council to administer that scheme, and that was a significant scheme which the revenues and benefits team had to administer. And similarly, the other one was the energy bill support scheme, so very similar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think just touching on the point that Councillor Dennis raised, then we should amend some minutes or amend the document, because we didn't. It says that we've got that in September, and we obviously don't. It's December. We're going to see that report on fraud. And okay, so are there any other questions or points for this? Yes, Cal.
Yes, thanks, Lee. I mean, it's not so much about the audit, but it's actually things that have been thrown up within the commentary, within the narrative within the audit. For example, we talk about the energy bill support scheme. I just wonder if someone could tell us why it is that Shams, we're called in this, as opposed to West Devon, that they did more households than we did, and yet they're smaller than us.
Yeah.
So that'd be one question there. In the insurance, why is it that our premium is so much higher than West Devon's? And I'm pleased to see that we're looking about reducing incidents. But again, if you compare and contrast us with West Devon, they've had one in since the beginning of this financial year. We've had 50. I mean, that is a sizable thing. I appreciate that some of it's about the waste, but perhaps that's something. Again, it's not really so much to do with audit. The fact that audit has thrown that up, but I think it's something that we should be aware of. The project management is slightly disappointing. I mean, my experience of what happened down at Batson, I don't. This is not what. That's not how I saw it. That it was very much an ad hoc approach, and it was only due to some heroic efforts by the harbour staff that actually that project happened at all. So put that down as something that went well as project management, I think would be pushing it somewhat. Having said that, I mean, obviously the bringing of waste back in house was a fantastic result for all those concerned, and they did incredibly well. Yeah, so those were just some of the things that I think had come up. Within that. Which aren't really to do with audit, but I just think that those are some narrative which perhaps there's some explanations to.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Brazil. I mean, personally, I think they are to do with audit because, by comparing what we're doing with another council and looking at the metrics, we can see if the outcome is good or bad. And that should feed in my view, to be a factor at least in thinking about the level of assurance we're getting. So I do think they're valid to raise. Councillor Abbott, I don't know if you've got any feedback on one or more of those 3 points.
No, I have my own questions. If you want to.
Okay. You can't answer any of it? No, okay, fire away with your own question then.
Okay, thank you. My first one does apply to the Batson development. So we're looking at page 21 or 23, depending on how you're counting. My question is not really about the process of the build, but actually about the allocation, and it's not mentioned. It's not been assessed, but these units were highly sought after, and there was a lot of interest in them, and so I'd be glad if I could understand the process. I'd be glad if I could review something like that as an exemplar of the way things are done, because there would have been conflicting demands, and so it's perhaps not to be. It's part of governance, but it's maybe something that a briefing would sort that out in my own mind. And then to go to my next question is on Devon Building Control Partnership. So that's pages 23 or 25. And it's interesting that they get such a good report, really, because I've had a bit of an issue about getting feedback, and in a way the officers are dealing with this, and so that will be okay personally, but I wonder how the system is set up in order when one has an issue, that one can have timely feedback in order to inform residents of what's going on. that would be nice if that was included in the assessment of the way the building control, obviously from the review, works very well. But there might be a missing link, or I might just have been unfortunate. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. I think what we are raising here is sort of general questions about performance of each of the groups against maybe service level agreements or response times or whatever, or against value for money. So perhaps I can go back to you if I can to see if you've got any questions. But in answering, could you comment as well if you take account of those factors, those sort of value for money or performance indicator metrics when you give an assessment, or are you really more looking just at the process and the governance side of things? Thank you.
Yeah, so we do absolutely look at value for money aspects. I mean, I think as you can see, we try to build in the actual facts and figures and get clarity. And obviously, it's interesting of some of the points about why is the insurance is provided by Southampton more expensive, or why are the grants being raised by one area or another higher, and so on. So absolutely, I think it's part of our work to provide that sort of clarity and actually get to the bottom of what the cost is for each council and what the number of transactions and so on, which is I think why it sort of highlights some of these questions by members today. I mean, in terms of the insurance area, I think we've said there needs to be more central sort of oversight control and thinking about, where the claims are being made and why and how and what ultimately can be done to reduce the incidents, because that's all important as well in terms of, reducing or increasing training of drivers and so on. In terms of, so I think Lisa should be able to provide a bit more information on the grants bit. I assume that the council will have paid the grants the grant applications that it received. I mean, that's and so whether there's a communication thing there, I don't know for the local residents. And in terms of the Batson development, I think I'd need to go back to my colleagues about more detail, but obviously we ultimately are aware that there were issues with the contractor, which I suppose the council had to manage, but I'd need to come back to you in terms of more detail on that. And then finally, the Devon Building Control, that there is an issue that about how Devon Building Control receives feedback, because from what we found, there was no process for somebody to go on one of the council's website and say, I've got a problem here. So whether it's Southam's website or West Devon website or Tinbridge, there's no sort of central process for somebody to actually make a complaint or a comment. So we've highlighted that to the building control and said, well, you've got no process to do that, and they, as it says, complaints are expected to be routed through the customer's own council website, but this is not possible, so they're not actually getting complaints. But if members have got, I suppose, more detailed questions, I can respond to them outside this meeting. And Lisa, do you want to talk about grants?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Middlemass. Yes, so when the government announced the £150 energy support for residents, they had two separate schemes. One was the council tax rebate scheme, whereby if a customer was paying by direct debit, we could automatically give them back their pay them £150 through our systems. And then separate to that, there was another scheme called the Energy Bill Support Scheme, and that was targeting if there were residents that couldn't apply under that £150 scheme, but instead that was an alternative way that they could receive payment of their £150. It was called the Alternative Fuel Payment Scheme. I suspect what the case was is that for South Hams, the majority of customers could receive their £150 through the council tax rebate scheme, and therefore didn't need to apply through the Alternative Fuel Payment Scheme. But we'll find out more details from the Revenues and Benefits Department on that. But it was just a way of an alternative method for customers to be able to receive that £150 support towards their energy bills. But like I say, I suspect the case was that there were more South Hams residents applying under the council tax rebate scheme.
So, Chair.
Mrs. Henstock can add.
Just to confirm, the applications were made to Bays, and we made the payments on behalf of Bays. So the applications weren't made direct to South Hams and West Devon; they were made to central government, and then when we were instructed what applications to make on their behalf. So we weren't quite so involved in the direct administration of the scheme. If that helps at all.
Councillor Brazil?
Well, no, I mean, it was just really that. Why? What, are they just more on it in West Devon than we are, residents?
No, I think more residents pay through direct debit in South Hams than in West Devon, and therefore they got their payment through the council tax rebate scheme. So there were two schemes for the £150. One was the council tax rebate scheme, and then the second one was called it's called the energy bill support scheme, but it's a way of being able to pay residents their £150 if they weren't paying by direct debit.
Oh, okay.
It was an alternative way.
Yeah, no, thank you.
So you've got to look at the two together rather than looking at the one in isolation.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, no, sorry, that was a slight misunderstanding on my part, so I'm happy with that.
Okay, thank you very much for answering. I've got a question regarding the food standards area, and I think it's a bit surprising to me. Yes, Councillor Rigg, you have a...
Sorry, before we move on, Chair, I haven't heard an answer to Councillor Abbott's question about the allocation of the units.
No, we haven't heard. I'll come back to that if I may.
Perfect.
Just on food standards then. So I'm a bit surprised. So I'd like to know when the food standards backlog is going to be recovered. I don't think anyone necessarily in this room has got an answer to that. But, oh yes, okay. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind then, please.
Yeah, I've got an update this morning, Chair. So one of the issues was obviously post-COVID, staff focused on other areas of work, and the recovery scheme, as agreed with the FSA, wasn't delivered. On the back of the audit and the work that the management have been doing, then we've now recruited an additional officer and trained up one of the COVID officers to become a technical officer to deal with food inspections. And the trajectory, as I was advised this morning, is that all of our high-risk food premises, so the A, Bs and the high-risk Cs, basically it's all done on a risk assessment basis in terms of the type of premises and the food they serve and so on. They will all be inspected by the end of this year, and we'll be fully back on track with the programme as set by the FSA next year. That's been communicated with the FSA, who are happy with the position as it stands.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Powell. Is that, when you say this year, is that a calendar year or financial year or astrological? Yeah,
it'll be the financial year. We always tend to talk in financial years.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm learning. Okay, right. Thank you. Any other points or questions from this? Yes, Councillor Dennis.
Just wondered if there's an explanation to Councillor Brazil's query on the insurance.
Yeah, well, so what I think. Oh yes, go on then, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it is predominantly to do with bringing the waste service back in-house and the cost of insurance for the waste service. I know previously when we did have the waste service in-house, a large part of our insurance claims were to do with waste vehicles. And we are seeing that now that we've brought the service back in-house. Our number of claims for insurance have gone back up as we had expected. Also, obviously, South Hams has the harbour, Salcombe Harbour as well, and a higher level of buildings than West Devon does, particularly around industrial estates and the value of the assets. In terms of insurance, we are going to be going back out and renewing our current arrangements in December. We use a broker, so that's how we ensure that we get the best price. And then next summer we will be beginning a full retender and also re-procuring a broker as well. So next summer there will be a big project around insurance. We are looking at cyber insurance to see whether that's something the council would want to take out. It is extremely expensive. and we are looking at whether or not we feel that would provide value for money, or whether we do something like self-insure, whereby we put an amount of money aside into a sort of an insurance fund. And I think some of the comments around insurance are that balance around, at the moment we transfer the risk in that we take out insurance. Do we self-insure for some of the services that the council runs? Some councils do that. I know Plymouth City certainly self-insure for quite a large part of their insurance. And again, that's a risk-based approach. So that is something we will be looking at in the next financial year, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Brazil, are you happy with the answer there on insurance? You think that's...
Well, yeah, just maybe we should use West Evans broker.
Okay,
well, same broker. It's the same broker for us and Teambridge.
Okay,
all three councils.
All right, Councillor Rake.
Sorry, can I just, through you, Chair, clarify? So, are you saying that in West Devon, because as I understand, the waste service is outsourced, so any claims against waste vehicles go to the contractor there?
That's right.
Okay, yes. Thank you.
So in West Devon, they pay a contractor price for their waste service, and therefore they're not paying a direct insurance cost.
Councillor Brazil.
Sorry, just one other thing I want to raise, not on that, but understand that has some effect. And that was on the travel and subsistence, and that is that I see that we don't claim any VAT back. And yet, presumably, everything that we're claiming for has VAT. I just wonder why we didn't do that, and what sort of amount are we talking about there?
Yeah, so with regards to how we do our travel claims, when a member of staff submits their travel claim, they do have to self-certify that they have done that business mileage, and they self-certify that everything that they have put down, they've actually done. With that, they are supposed to attach a petrol receipt showing the VAT that has been claimed. And the date of that petrol receipt has to be before they've done the journey. Now, we moved to that self-certification method during the transformation programme back in T18. So back in 2015, whereas before we did used to have a member of staff sort of checking all of the claims, we don't do that anymore. We do self-certify. And I think what we haven't been doing is ensuring that a receipt is attached to every single claim coming in. And unless we do that, we can't claim the VAT. We have been claiming some of the VAT, but not all of it. I couldn't put a figure on that at the moment. It has been flagged in the audit report. I don't think it's a significant amount, but it is something that Pauline and Mr. Pounds, who's also on the call, travel and subsistence is within our area alongside the head of HR, and it is something we will be significantly tightening up on. And I think in reality we will have to take a hard line probably with staff, in that if they don't attach a VAT receipt, they won't receive payment for their mileage. And we will take a much harder line approach now that it's been flagged in the audit. Thank you.
And Councillor Brazil.
Well, obviously it's the amount that we're talking about. We're talking about a few pounds and pennies. So what?
Probably maybe 2,000 or 3,000.
Okay, so not a massive amount. But what I wouldn't want to do is use a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
Exactly.
Here. So and the self-certifying, fine. I'm sure that we can have algorithms in place or whatever that can highlight when suddenly there's a spike in a claim or whatever.
Yeah, we do spot checks.
Yeah, no, fine, spot checks is fine. But what I mean is that, it's one of those things like, it's a bit like how we had to audit grants from Europe, which was just absolutely tedious and ridiculous and cost us more money doing that than any fraud that might have been perpetuated. So just really, I'm just saying that let's not overdo it. But if it's a lot of money, then let's make sure everyone puts in VAT receipts.
Yeah, Ms. Henston.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, you're quite right, Councillor Brazil, because we've got to make sure all those VAT receipts are VAT receipts and they cover the right period. So there's quite a lot of administration time involved in that, and you've got to balance that against the small amount that we'll be getting back. But obviously, we want to make sure we're doing things correctly, and we will look at the policy going forward. And HR are currently writing a policy which will be circulated to all staff once we have confirmed what we're going to do.
Yeah, yeah, please, Mr. Middlemas.
Just to say that the council is moving to a policy of line management authorization of claims,
Okay.
and when they do that, they should check that the receipts are attached and support the claim. So council is moving that is very well important. We think that they do that because this is typically an area elsewhere where there's fraud. So useful it's doing that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other different points to raise? Yes, Councillor Rake.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly returning to the insurance issue, is the fact that obviously we now cover our waste fleet. Is that when that's presented in the accounts? Is that included in the change in cost of providing the waste service? So that's sort of ring fenced off within. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All right. So what I'm hearing, one good thing that we've set up is the feedback that we've got that we're going to come to in a moment, the feedback and the sort of tracking of the raised issues. So on some of the points that have been questioned, I think we've either had a good answer or perhaps we'll feed in the detail into the next iteration. Yes.
Just to say that I'll my colleagues watch this meeting, and we'll come back on the particular, provide more detail, for instance, on that Bapston project and so on.
Right.
Outside of this meeting.
Yeah. Okay, that would be helpful. That was the thing I was wondering, that most of these points are probably covered in follow up. Batson allocation, I think, will be useful to add because I don't think that's been highlighted before. And I think also the project management, it'll be very interesting because I think what's important in project management is, not so much whether we've got project management procedures and processes and documents, but are we keeping to time and to budget? And, small projects I'll be interested, and big ones I'll be interested to know. So we've obviously had some examples of projects that are not keeping to time and budget. And I think we need to look at that a bit more. And the Devon Buildings Control, I think that also should be fed into another review or to the feedback that we're giving. And food standards, I think we've covered. So, yeah, please.
Yeah, perhaps I can just clarify with the Devon Building Control Partnership, just that members will be aware that we have 2 members on the board of that committee. They receive information on performance, which is quite substantial, but it tends to be performance based on the fee-paying customers and the quality of that service. And I think the issue that Councillor Abbott's raised, which is one that I've been working with him on, has been about responding to people who aren't paying them a fee for some work. So it's something that I can certainly raise through the members at that board and get some feedback on how they manage that sort of level of performance.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Powell. That's helpful. All right, so I think one way or another we've covered the questions, which is good, and we shouldn't lose sight of them. So thanks for raising that. And we'll take the strategy paper then in the next meeting. So in the meantime, the recommendation is to note and approve that we've made progress and we've noted the key issues. Yep. Is there a proposer, Councillor Oram? Yep. And a seconder? Yep, Councillor Rake. All those in favour? Unanimous. All right, great. Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Mr. Middlemas, and also to your team who spent time listening in. But I think there were some very good points there raised. I should actually, sorry, before we move on, I should ask Councillor Brazil if he alluded earlier to some points that maybe we need to think about adding and to the strategy when we discuss it in the next meeting. If there are any ideas that you've got, Councillor Brazil, I don't know if you want to raise them now or at a later point.
Well, not necessarily, just something that has come to light you know, in the last few months is, and I don't know whether it would be with an audit or whatever, is that is risks around decisions that were being taken within the council that I felt were not transparent, and the responsibility of those decisions were falling on one or possibly two people, which I didn't think was correct. And in some cases, we were talking about large sums of money. And I just wonder, you know, is it the job of internal audit to spot those internal risks and to highlight those up, or is it our job? Just where does that fit within the, you know, the internal audit is doing its job, going through what it feels are the important issues. Where does that fall within in the remit of both this committee and indeed the internal audit?
Well, it's a good question. I don't know the answer. Maybe Mr. Powell can give a comment or suggestion, or yep, Mr. Buckle.
Chairman, my view would be that would fall within the role of internal audit. So any member could ask Mr. Middlemass and his team to look at any area, as long as we could accommodate that within the audit plan. So the audit plan is brought to members sort of with the audits that have been completed on a quarterly basis. So if there was an audit that members felt was of a higher priority than another audit, it could be swapped into the plan. So if there was an area that a member said, oh, I'm concerned about this area, we could speak to Mr. Middlemass. That area could be put into the plan, and another audit would either move into next year or drop off the plan. So yes, you as members have direct access to the internal audit team.
Okay. I mean, sorry to be a bit cryptic about it. I mean, basically what I'm talking about are variations to 106s. You know, some of those, in some cases, we're talking about lots of money here. Now I think we are looking to change the way that happens, so it won't be the case again. But it was an area of great concern, let's say, to me. And it was only came to light because of actually the Southam Society picked up on it. But you know, and I've been assured that everything's above board and it all went well, but it's just open to abuse badly. I mean, we talk about people claiming for extra few miles or this or that. I mean, that pales into insignificance about what the effect that the variations to 106s can have.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Brazil. I think this is something we need to take and consider how we action it. But I'm interested in what other councillors, other members' views are before we make a decision on it. Any feedback or thoughts from the committee? No, I'm getting a lot of blank, unsure looks. Okay, no. Right, yes, please.
I'm just thinking, as it's part of the strategy, if we're going to look at that next time, we could come back with.
Yeah, that's one option. Yes, that certainly could be one option, but I wonder whether it needs to be done more quickly, because it doesn't sound like it's an ongoing thing. If we're going to fix it, it sounds like it's a historic situation we need to dig into and see what lessons there are. Councillor Presswell?
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if there was a set number of people that have to see these large sums of money going through, you know, like number of signatories on a cheque, for instance. At the moment, how many is that, or does that not exist? It's just within the department that's choosing to spend this money.
Yes, good question, Councillor Brazil. Is that really what's at the root of this?
No. It's so in a 106, for example, in a 106, you could say, for example, that there will be a sum of money paid for affordable housing, you know, off-site affordable housing. At the moment, the way our rules are in this house, say it's £500,000, building and development, £500,000 for affordable housing, and then that 106 can be varied and say actually they don't have to pay that, and at the moment our system allows that to happen. So there's no audit trail or public audit trail of that happening, and it's one individual or one officer who can sign that off.
Right. So it seems to me what we've got here, and I'll seek some advice. It seems to me what we've got here, if I summarise, is we've got an external complaint that a process may or may not be followed, and it may or may not have been good use of public money or value for money. And what we're trying to understand is, did we have rules in place around this? Were they followed? Was there an audit trail? And what lessons could be learned, or how can we improve? That's, forgetting the detail, that's the sort of situation in broad outline.
Yeah, I mean,
and so what I'm seeking is advice from officers as to the best way of handling that, either in the committee separately or with internal audit. And if there's, okay, now we've got more comments. Yeah, Mr. Powell.
Yeah. So I think, as Councillor Brazil explained, that particular issue has now been dealt with, and changes will be made in terms of the process. We've got two issues here. We've got previous decisions, and we've also got what's in our constitution and the delegated authority, which existed at the time of a decision of that nature. So there's a couple of bits there. I mean, we're looking at the constitution at the moment. I'm working with Councillor Birch on that, in terms of changes that were put forward as part of the manifesto, and obviously the administration's views now. So, I mean, in terms of a process, it's an option to ask Paul's team to look at a decision, or to ask officers to come back with to review with members and come back to the committee in the future.
Okay, okay, so we've got two options. Yes, Councillor, I think Councillor Hancock may have been first.
Thank you. So if I understand correctly, Councillor Brazil is referring to negotiations surrounding viability assessments. Is that right? And Section 106s.
Well, I mean,
that's because that's what sparks.
Yeah, no, well, no. Look, the thing is that a process was followed whereby basically this council handed over, in essence, a large sum of money to a developer. Now, that may have been right, and what I'm told is processes were followed. But what concerns me is that was not transparent at any stage, and that the people taking those decisions were very limited in number. And what that, and I'm not casting aspersions on that particular thing, but that is open to abuse, absolutely massively open to abuse. And like I said, I mean, we quibble about whether someone's claimed an extra mile on their travel expense, which is of nothing compared to what that was, and the opportunities for abuse, and so that's why, okay, viability, whatever. It's not really whether it's viable or this. It's just that we were allowed to vary 106s in this council with nobody knowing that had happened. And I personally, I find that totally unacceptable. And we are, as Drew said, we are now bringing that under control. But that's the kind of thing that, you know, I think that we should be very vigilant about. If you look at all the councils that go under, almost invariably the thing about them is lack of transparency. There are decisions being taken that members do not know about. And that is not right. And as a council, I think we should fight against that.
Councillor,
sorry,
yes.
just
Go on then, quickly, Councillor.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to finish. Yeah,
what we need.
Councillor Brazil is completely correct. I think in that regard that the need for transparency around those negotiations are crucial, not least to give the public assurance that the planning system is not completely corrupt and weighted against them, which is quite a common assumption, and it ultimately it undermines the council, I think.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. You know, that's part of the job of this committee, to make sure that we do have that transparency, and that the public can be comfortable that decisions are taken in the right way. Councillor Dennis, please.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm happy to support that. Obviously, the internal audit looks into that. Well, understanding that presumably it hasn't been audited recently. Obviously, if it had been audited, you know, last year or something, then we could just look at the recommendations made and test the new system against those. If it hasn't been audited recently, then yes, let's ask for it to be audited again. But would it be better to do that now or once the new system is in place, so perhaps later in the year?
Okay, yeah, good suggestion. Mr. Powell?
Sorry, just for clarity, so I don't want to put words into anyone's mouth here, but if we're saying we want to look at to ensure that there are procedures in place for future decisions to prevent this happening, then that's a review of the Constitution and the proposals that were agreed at executive last week. Now that work is already in train, or are we looking at going back to look at a previous decision?
Well, I think we don't want to.
Councillor Brazil was that he understands the context of the previous one, and it's making sure that decisions don't sit with one or two members or officers in the future.
I think we're not trying in this. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Bell. I think in this committee we're not trying to make or advise on the rules in the future. That's not this committee's job. It's more to say, as Councillor Hancock said, was the decision made in the right way, and was it transparent, and did it follow either the delegated authority or the Constitution, and was it communicated correctly? I think that's, and so I do think it's something we should probably do now, because if there's any information that's important that should come to light before the new Constitution or the work is done that you just alluded to make the changes. So I would suggest that we ask internal audit, if Mr. Middlemass is happy, just to take a quick look at this. I don't know what we would remove to try and fit this work in, but I would think it would be good to try and do it quickly, but not to. I mean, it's a very, very specific situation here. It's not a massive audit of a whole process. It's one decision looking at how it was made and what were the authorities assumed for that. So, are you comfortable in doing that, Mr. Middlemass, in a sort of fairly rapid way?
Yeah, I think that should be fine. I mean, we do look at 106 and how councils manage it. It is important that where councils determine sums of money with property managers, companies, that they collect it and manage it and so on, and but very happy to look at sort of the past instances where there's been concerns and to hopefully to feed into current development of future constitution policy and so on. So that we'll take that forward as a sort of bit of priority and look to report on it quickly.
Okay, thank you very much. I think then, I don't know if we need to have a particular motion for this, but do we need to have a specific motion for this? Would that be useful? So maybe we could say that the committee is asking internal audit to look at the processes around the S106, in particular changes, and look at examples of where changes were made and what the authorities were, or the delegated authorities were in relation to that, to see if there's any. Sorry, am I going a bit fast? To see if there are any any recommendations which could feed into an improved way of doing things. Councillor Dennis, you sort of half proposed that. I don't know if you want to propose it, second it.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rake, are you?
Sorry, I would support that, but I am concerned that it's perhaps a little over-specific. We don't want to be sort of playing whack-a-mole with a lack of transparency. If we address it specifically to the area of S106.
And what's your
suggestion there? Well, I think I take your point that this isn't really our job, although we are the Audit and Governance Committee, and this does seem a matter of governance. But that I think we need to bear in mind, perhaps not for this motion, but that we need to bear in mind that this issue of transparency runs across the whole piece and might need further work. But that's all.
Okay, all right. I mean, I think that's a good point, but we're halfway through proposing a motion.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. Is there a seconder? Yep, Councillor Oram. All right, can we just see what we're saying then, please? Just so that, because it's quite hard to. Well, I mean, then. Yeah, we probably should have got that first, but it's useful to see it if we can on the screen, Amelia. I don't know if we can do that, or
I was going to put an internal.
or read it. It doesn't matter.
Got internal audit review. Section.
Can you press the button, please?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Internal audit to review section 106 and to address concerns raised and to review the delegated authority and to come back with recommendations.
Is that enough? Okay, Councillor. Sorry. Yes.
Well, I don't need to say, you probably don't need to say and make recommendations because we will do it anyway, but just review, we'll review it and come back to committee.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have thought so, yeah, if
Okay, good.
officers are prepared to support us in the work, then we would do it.
Okay, good. All right, thanks. So we've got a proposal, we've got a seconder. Do we have all those in favour? Right, there we go. Internal audit to review S106 processes on whatever we need to say and address concerns raised and review the delegated authority as appropriate. Okay, good. Thanks very much, Councillor Brazil, for raising that. And Councillor Dennis for helping us find a good proposal. Right, thanks. Let's move on then, because we're taking a bit of time on that. And I need to find my notes to see what's next. The internal audit recommendations tracker. So, Councillor Brazil, would you like to introduce the tracker, which I think is a very good step, and perhaps we'll just hear the detail.
No, I think it is, and funny enough, it referenced in the previous report that this was something we were working on. It's the first time I've seen. I think it's the way. It is the way forward. It's whereby, you know, that we get recommendations. Sometimes you get recommendations from an internal audit, and then they just disappear into the ether. And this is a way of actually noting them and seeing how we're doing. You know, I'll leave it to members to comment on individuals, but it seems to me eminently sensible that we concentrate on the high priorities not started, and working backwards in progress, and indeed obviously the ones that completed. That's the job done. So yeah, I'll leave that. I think it stands as it is.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Brazil. I don't know, Mr. Powell, if you want to just elaborate a bit on how this is working, just so that we've got more of a picture. Thank you.
Certainly, Chair. Yeah, I mean, as Councillor Brazil said, this is the first time we've done this. It's and I think it's a really good step forward. So really welcome any comments from members as to the format, whether it's presented in the way that works and you can understand it. Is it clear? We are concentrating on the high risk recommendations, and 378 of the recommendations from audit, so they've been busy over the last couple of years, and there hasn't been a system in place in the past, and things have come forward, which is why we've seen the return of some limited assurance audits to the committee. So this should prevent that happening. It'll ensure that heads of service are fully aware that they have a responsibility to act upon recommendations from audit. And if they're unable to act upon them or they don't agree, then there's a conversation at the time of the audit so that we're clear what has come forward from the team, and that as management we've accepted those recommendations and therefore we've got to put them in place. There are some that are recommendations stroke opportunities, and we're working hard with Paul's team to make sure we're clear which one's an actual recommendation that we need to put in place and one is an opportunity we might want to explore. As ever, operationally, we're always managing risk, and sometimes we don't hit all the dates, but we want that to be an active decision rather than it happened because no one was looking at it, if you see what I mean. There's a lot of service areas covered within this report. Between Lisa and I and Pauline, we can probably answer most queries on most areas, but as it covers the whole council, we might have to take away some specific technical queries on some of the high risk, the high level recommendations. But no, hopefully it's helpful for members. It's certainly proving helpful to us as officers. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Powell. Okay, and are there any questions or comments? Are you raising your hand, Councillor Hancock? Or no? Okay, just checking. All right, Councillor Rick.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly support. I think this is a very good piece of work, and in terms of the overall approach, my only concern is that we risk having sort of zombie recommendations that drag on from year to year. I mean, there are still 38 that are in progress from 2021, and I just wonder if we should give consideration to some sort of way of not allowing that to happen, sort of maybe killing them off and relaunching them, or something that because otherwise if they become kind of permanent in progress matters, then perhaps this isn't the place that they should be considered.
Okay, before we sort of answer that, are there any other comments? Okay, Mr. Middlemass, then what's your thinking?
Yes, so on that, obviously this is a start of a process for the council really to get a grasp on the recommendations and to review them and consider which of them have been done and which haven't, and it's a good start. I suppose I would say that the council needs to get to a position where officers need to can't meet the agreed target dates, need to extend. They need to come to this committee and ask this committee to agree, an extension. Then for this committee to review it and agree or otherwise, and challenge officers about, or why can't you meet these, particularly for the high ones and perhaps even the medium ones, but particularly the high ones. So that's how it works in many other areas, and is good practice. Obviously this is a bit of an interim process at the period at the moment in terms of getting down the number. But I think there's whether the committee wants, because I do note the recommendations that are in are a bit woolly in terms of the work, and whether it needs to be a bit more challenging target, and officers might hate me for this in terms of reducing down the high ones by in the next 6 months to a very low figure.
Are you saying the targets or the recommendations are woolly, or the actions that the council are taking are woolly, or maybe
no,
both?
just the proposal's next step. So I just wonder if
Yes.
the proposal next step might be that, as I said, that there is that the focus should be on reducing down the number of high ones to a very low figure within the next 6 months as a target for officers to strive towards.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to comment, Mr. Powell, on some of those ideas?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think there's a risk here of bringing 378 odd recommendations and looking at them in minute detail at committee level. I think that's probably a bit over the top. I would suggest you have officers in place to manage risk at an operational level. The higher level ones, which we're covering now and picked up through the update on the internal report, I think is where members should be looking. So I wouldn't support having to ask permission to move a date. I would hope that the committee would keep an overall view of where we are in terms of internal audits. What I would say is that we've moved forward from a huge number of outstanding audit recommendations to a low number, and we will actively manage those to get them down to the point where we won't have as many outstanding. So it's a process we're going through. If we had a date to reduce it down to a certain number, it might be a little bit arbitrary. So my view would be to bring a report back to members in, say, 6 months' time, where I imagine the committee would be expecting to see a reduced number of high risk and a reduced total as well. And going back to Councillor Rake's point of view, the ones from 2021, they've been implemented, or there's been discussion with audit, or there's been a further audit where they've become redundant and are now removed. So the number we're looking at is a lot less.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Powell. I tend to agree with that approach wholeheartedly. I mean, firstly, I would say this, just echoing what Councillor Brazil said, this seems a very, very good step forward. And, you know, also not only in the activity, but I really also like the way it's presented, because you have just shown in a bit of detail the ones that are late and that are high priority, which is, I think, the ones this committee should see. I don't think we want to look at all the details of the low ones or so on. I think, you know, also time moves on and maybe some historic recommendations are no longer valid or have been, you know, done in a slightly different way. You can delete those with discussion and from internal audit, and I think let's leave you to do that. So I'm quite happy with this. What I would say is that in some cases the action that officers are taking, or what you've written here, is a little bit woolly and waffly wordy, and there should be some target dates on when you're going to fix the high priority ones, rather than have a date to fix all of them. Let's see from officers when you are going to sort some of these out. So I'm quite happy with that, and I think that's a good approach. Yeah, Councillor Dennis.
It strikes me that it mentions new corporate debt policy and enforcement agent contract to be in place during 2023. It strikes me if you fix that, you knock off quite a few of those high priority ones. But to be in place during 2023 is, as you say, a little bit woolly. And could we ask for an update on that particular one in November? The second point I was just going to make is, you know, I appreciate the idea of coming back in 6 months' time, but if it is just an Excel spreadsheet and therefore quite easy to get these figures, would it not be helpful for us just to have literally just the table and to be able to see progress in 3 months' time in November at the next meeting, just to try and avoid this drifting on for another 6 months?
Okay, I mean, that's some good points. What do people think? Do we want to see it, Councillor? Next, you're nodding there vigorously.
Yes, I think it would be good to have it as a standing item that we can review it every time, and it's not, we don't want lots of information, lots of detail. It's just having that, like Councillor Dennis says, having that
Ongoing.
rolled over. Ongoing.
Yeah. Okay. So in the format that it's been provided now, or do you need even less next time? What do you think?
I think just the tables with the figures in, you know, just literally the numbers, just so that we can see that there is movement, and there has been movement from this date sooner than 6 months.
Yep.
You don't need to drill down into the detail, just literally that, right, we've moved on X
Okay,
number
is that possible then, Mr. Powell, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if we just the data rather than with all the narrative, that will be fine. Obviously, it will be a moving feast because there'll be a number of recommendations that will be coming on board as a result of audits that have been delivered in that
You're already
quarter.
giving some reason why the numbers might go up?
Oh, not at all, not at all. I'm just saying, you know, it depends how busy
fine.
audit partners are. But I mean, would you? So,
yes.
Are you talking at each meeting, or yeah?
And what meeting is it? So, well, it's a November meeting. Well, it's the next one, or because the one following that is March.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Don't have a 3 months really, do we? Oh, December. I mean, I beg your pardon, December meeting. No, there's no meeting in November. December meeting, beg your pardon. December meeting. So we just have the figures, and then in March we'd have the report as it is now. Is that Councillor Dennis?
Sorry, and just going back to my first point, which
Yes.
is about that corporate debt policy and enforcement agent contract, if we can have an update on that in the next meeting.
Right, so you want a date when you want just a date rather than it's going to be fixed this year or wherever. Okay. All right, we're happy with that. I think we don't need to. Councillor Councillor Rake.
Sorry, Chair, I appreciate
That's okay.
your keenness to move on, and I'll share that. But just looking, just to 2.7.1, for instance, which is on page number 30 or 32, the September update, I've just chosen this one at random, but seems to sort of, the way it's worded seems to suggest that the health and safety issue has been addressed. So, looking at the face of that response, the concern and the response, I can't understand why it's still in progress, and what the process for knocking it off the list would be, and on the face of it, why it hasn't been.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I see as an example of either a slightly dated recommendation or very woolly response, or without any specific dates or, you know, closure, or perhaps a bit of both of those things. So that's, you know, what we have to respect, I think, though, is, as a couple of people have said, this is a new thing. We've only just put it in place, and you know, I'm sure that officers and internal audit will just take note of the feedback that we need to just tighten it up a bit as we go along. That makes sense. Yes, Mr. Midmice.
Just to say, obviously happy to work with officers if they come to us and say, well, is this closed? Are you content? And then they're happy to provide the feedback to you if you want that confirmation. But I think I had the similar points about, yeah, is this closed or you know, because it reads as it's closed. But
Clear, yeah. Councillor Hancock. You didn't have your hand. You're moving your hand a lot, Councillor Oram. I'm very keen to get you in the discussion. Every time you scratch your ear, Councillor Oram.
Thank you, Chair. Just if we've got these high priorities in progress, as it were, is it not helpful if we had another column there to say, you know, void or moot, something of that description, so we can see at a glance what recommendations have been because they're not completed. But the two that we're seeing here, 271 and 272, they're obvious ones where the recommendations are no longer valid, and the update September 2023 sort of confirms that in both areas. So would a column just to say there are two recommendations that are now void might be a good way for us to sort of see it at a glance. And if we have any questions on which recommendations are void and why, then we can bring that up at a later date.
Yeah, Mr. Powell.
I think we've been unusually overly generous with the information we've provided. I think 2.71 and 2.72, to be honest, I think we could have completed them. You know, so I think I would suggest we keep it as either complete or in progress. But if we'd moved those into there, I suppose we wouldn't need to answer the question, would we? If you see what I mean? Because they were 370 odd, and we're down to a small number now. Yeah. So I think we can refine it, and where we are coming forward with a high level recommendation that's still in play, we'll be clearer about when we will complete that piece of work. If that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, completed might mean you've done the work, but it also might mean that the requirement's gone away and what we've achieved is sufficient in the current situation. That's completed as well. Yeah. So I think it's the same thing, really.
Yeah, I'm content with that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any more? Let's move on. Thanks very much for that, Mr. Powell, Councillor Brazil. I think it's a good step, and it'll help close the loop in, you know, making sure some of these internal audit recommendations are actually implemented. So good. So we've got recommendation. I'll move that if there's a seconder. Councillor Nix. Yeah. All in favour? Oops, they were very quick, but I think, well, we've missed out.
We're missing one.
We're missing one. Okay, he's abstained then.
Yes.
All right.
He kept insisting.
He's gone to work out. He's gone to work out what he's going to say, hasn't he?
Write them off. Maybe he's gone for a cross.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Middleman. Item 9. Item 9. You just missed a vote. You abstained. Freeport Task and Finish Group verbal update. So, okay, so this is up to me, I think, here. So, we did hope that we were going to have the report of the Task and Finish Group. We have had 2 meetings on Freeport, but not the third one. Just to give everybody a view of where we are, we've got a draft report now, but we couldn't have the third meeting because Councillor Birch couldn't attend, and so instead the third meeting will be on Monday of next week. Yeah, And in the meantime, we're getting some feedback from officers, because what we're very keen to do is to make sure that the report doesn't have any confidential information that we shouldn't be providing to the public, that it's got all its basic facts and figures right, and it's not recommending anything that's sort of way out or can't be implemented. So officers are giving their feedback on those things in the next day or so. Councillor Birch is going to give his feedback. And then we will have a third meeting on Monday, as I say, to finalise the report. It's officially for task and finish members only, but it is open to other members. And if people on this committee or not on this committee, in the council want to attend the third meeting, they're welcome to do so. Following that, it will be put in some format and then sent to the executive. So we won't, as the audit and governance, see it until our meeting in December. But it may be that I can circulate it, or it be circulated separately. I'm still not 100% sure about that, because until it's published, it shouldn't be released, if you know what I mean. And it won't be officially published until the papers come out for the executive, which I think is on the 30th of November. And so the papers will come out, I guess, in the middle of November. Okay, are there any questions on that whole process or feedback? All right. Good. Okay, let's move on. There's no motion here, so let's move on to the next point then. So, Annual Treasury Management Report, item 10. Councillor Brazil to introduce the report, please.
Sorry, I should have put my thing on. Basically, I just said that I'm not going to pretend that I'm absolutely understand all the charts and all the figures there, but I'm sure that Lisa does. So please ask her any questions on some details. Just on from that, I think it's very important that we see headline figures in these, so that we can at least understand, whether things are going up, down, or bad, or indifference. And I think that the report is clear in that to some extent. Just obviously it's pleasing to see that we've made so much money in respect of interest rates from the investment income. Obviously due to increasing, not inflation, increasing bank rates. I should caution that, of course, is that when you get this situation, it's not just free money, because we have to spend more on wages and general inflation anyway. So the increased investment income is counterbalanced by the extra costs that falls upon this council. So I don't think we should think like, oh great, we've got an extra £1 million that we can then just spend. And that's all I'd like to say, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Brazil. So I don't know if any finance team want to add any more detail to this, or there's a lot to it, or let us go to questions. What would you like to do?
Chairman, I'd just like to add a couple of things. We get a monthly report on our investments from our Treasury Management Advisors, and in the last month we achieved an average interest rate of 5.24 on our investments. We have, for example, we've made an investment with Standard Chartered Bank at 5.89. That was a 6-month investment until January 2024. Obviously, when the Bank of England met, they have held interest rates at 5.25. So we do think that 5.25 will be the top of the interest rate curve now, and we think that it will stay there for a little while and then start dropping. So there was on page 45, there was the latest interest rate forecast, and that was predicting that bank rate would go up to 5.5, but the latest predictions are that it will remain at 5.25 and not actually increase to 5.5. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thanks very much. All right, are there any questions or feedback on this for Councillor Brazil to answer? Yeah, Councillor Hancock.
At last. There you go. Not a technical question, I hope, but I think it's important to ask, when we're looking at our investments, do we have an idea of where those investments are going and what we're investing in, and are we assured that those investments are in things that support the wider council priorities and would not and that we could not be accused of bringing our priorities into disrepute through those investments.
Yes, okay, good point, Councillor Hancock. Thank you very much for that. What relates to ethical investment strategy, really. So, yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you very much.
Mrs. Buckle, please.
So yes, there will be a very detailed report coming back to members at the December committee, looking at our counterparties and where the council currently invests and what our strategy is for treasury management investments. At the moment, we tend to invest with only banks and building societies in the UK, so we don't invest with banks abroad. We keep it to the UK. We also invest with money market funds as well, so that's quite a big part of our portfolio. And at the moment, our strategy is that we don't invest with other local authorities as well. And the reason for that is very similar things, because some councils, for example, had lent money to some other councils. Thurrock was one of those, and then struggled obviously to get those investments back. We do have something called ESG ratings, so all of our counterparties are looked at with regards to ESG, so that is things like, as you say, environmental, social, governance, and indeed one of the latest investments we've done, which is with Standard Chartered Bank, they have a ESG very high rating. And we've been able to get very high rate of interest with them. The government were going to bring in that treasury management strategies had to give an ESG rating for all counterparties, but that has not come in over the last year. We will be doing some treasury management training for members. Unfortunately, I think that is now February, because the date we were going to do it, Devon Audit Partnership have got their seminar, and that's a really good seminar that I would really encourage all members to go to. But yes, when we've got that treasury management training, we can really go into the ESG side of things in quite a lot of detail, and the report that members will receive in December will look at that as well. It isn't possible for us to, similar with the Devon Pension Fund, to look at all of the counterparties and sort of give them a rating around that, because that hasn't come in nationally, we don't have the resource in our council to do that, or the expertise really to do that kind of rating. But probably that will come in maybe in a year, 2 years time, that all counterparties will be given a sort of ESG rating, but that's not in place at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mrs. Buckle. Are there any other points on the Councillor?
Thank you. Just looking at the two CCLA funds, do we know if the property fund are the underlying investments in that directly owned properties, or are they in property, like real estate investment trusts, etc.?
Yes, so the sectors they invest with, it's industrial, it's offices, it's retail, warehouses, it's shops. So yeah, it is quite a diverse portfolio. It's mainly that they own and operate commercial properties across the UK, in those areas. So there are quite a lot of blue chip tenants as well. But with regard to that investment, you will see that that did drop round about March, as did the Diversified Income Fund. And it is something we have regular meetings with CCLA in terms of, obviously these are long-term strategic investments that we don't intend to sell, but obviously we do need to track their current valuation. But yes, we had a meeting with them recently where they talked about some of the commercial properties that they have recently acquired, and the tenants that are in those properties. Thank you.
Sorry, if I may, Chair, just so in terms of those two funds, how big? I mean, I take your point that they're long-term investments that we don't intend to sell. If we wanted to shift our allocation, say, towards more of the, how big is our investable universe that would be comparable to the CCLA funds, or are those the only kind of non-fixed income investments that are open to us?
So yeah, the CCLA was specifically set up for local authorities. So there's over 230 councils that currently invest in the CCLA. They are churches, charities and local authorities. That's what CCLA stands for. The size of that portfolio is over £1 billion. So it is a very, very big fund. And similarly to the Diversified Income Fund, that is smaller. The fund size for the DIF fund is only 150 million. So the property one is a lot bigger than the Diversified Income Fund. That more looks at things like equities, infrastructure, property, and that one does look at, it's not just the UK, it also invests in places like Asia, Japan, North America. So we've got investments in both. CCLA would offer to come and give a presentation to members as well at the audit committee. So if that is something that members would be interested in, that is something we can arrange as well, and that is something that they offered when we met with them. If you've got any more specific questions that we can ask them.
Sorry, I don't think I was clear in my question, which wasn't about CCLA. It was about if we were looking, say, for a diversified income investment, can we only go to CCLA, or could we look on the broader market?
I think we can only go to CCLA because of the way they have been set up specifically for local authorities. But that is a question we can take back to our Treasury Management advisors. And like I say, in December, we'll be bringing a report to members looking at where the council does place its investments, because there are other things that we don't currently use, like you can do ultra dated short bonds. We don't currently invest in those. Like I say, we could invest with other local authorities. That isn't something that we do at the moment. But in terms of that, Diversified Income Fund, it is predominantly CCLA, and they have been set up specifically for local authorities to invest with. And there are over 230 councils that do invest with them at the moment.
Okay, Councillor Brazil.
Yeah, just on that, I mean, obviously what we could do and what councils have done, and some of them absolutely disastrously, is invest money in, do our own in commercial property investments. I have to, I mean, I was very supportive of this because it was a basket of properties controlled by professionals who knew what they were doing, rather than councils being, who are open to open to the market forces and not necessarily having the skill set to be able to deal with what that entailed. So I think, as Lisa said, the answer is we do have other opportunities, but I think as far as that kind of investment fund is concerned, those are slightly limited. We couldn't go to BlackRock or whatever and say invest in your high risk property bond, please? I don't think that's probably right, isn't it? Because of the credit rating. I mean, you know, like I said, I really supported the CCLA, and it was at a time when obviously we were getting next to no return on our cash balances that we had in bank accounts. That's why it's gone up $1 million. I mean, we may want to revisit it now if interest rates are going to stay high for a long time, because although we're getting a return on it, and we may think actually probably better to put that into a you know, an interest account or instead. Obviously, the one thing that we were hoping is that we get capital growth there as well. That hasn't happened, but you know, it's a long-term investment, so maybe that will happen. Just a couple of other points. I think the if you get an opportunity to go to the seminar at Buck Farsley, isn't it? I would highly recommend that. Highly recommend it. I'm afraid I can't go this time because I'm doing something else. But I would, you know, if you can do it, do. And the lunch is really good too.
And the wine.
You can Buckfast wine, obviously. You know, they haven't sent it all to Glasgow. The other thing is I do think that the Treasury management sort of seminar that we're having, or workshop that we're having in February, will give us an opportunity to really drill down and to ask those questions. I think David asked about, you know, ethical investments. I think it's absolutely right that we should maybe be more. We should be able to say no. We only invest ethically. You know, and we haven't put money into Shell or Saudi Arabia or something like that. Anyway, yeah, no, I think that's probably all I've got to say.
Councillor, thank you, Councillor. Was it Councillor Dennis?
Just one point really on that workshop, that it's obviously a bit of a shame that it's now been rescheduled all the way till February, and I don't know if we could just try harder to maybe try and bring that forward again, because we've got another meeting in between now and then.
Yeah.
Chairman, the difficulty was in finding a Thursday between now and Christmas. Very happy if members would be happy to come in, say on a Monday or a Friday. We could certainly bring the Treasury Management training forward, but we could not find a Thursday between now and February that we could do it, unfortunately.
Well, maybe we could take that as an email outside, you know, and give people a chance to see if there's an alternative date, because I do agree with Councillor Dennis, it's a long way off now. But yeah, I appreciate that it's useful training, and it'd be good to get more understanding of these things in detail, wouldn't it? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so a couple of things from my side. So congratulations, Councillor Brazil, in the 1 million additional income generated.
I think you need to thank Liz Truss for that. Thanking the economy and sending up interest rates through the roof.
Well, I mean, I was also going to say that unfortunately, as you alluded to, the CCLA fair value of the CCLA funds did also decline by almost exactly the same amount in the period of close to $1 million. So when you said it was a basket, Councillor Brazil, not quite sure what sort of basket you meant, but I know it has recovered a little bit since then, which is good. I've got a bit of a question about the recommendation. So what I don't quite understand is why this committee is being asked to approve the indicators in 2022-23, which is a year that's just gone. It doesn't quite make sense to me how we can approve something that's historic. What are we being asked to really do here, please?
So Chairman, it's very similar to the Audit Committee being asked to approve the set of accounts. In Treasury Management, there are 3 reports that statutorily we have to bring to the Audit and Governance Committee, one of which is the annual Treasury Management report looking back on last year. I'm very happy if you would like to change that to say the Audit Committee notes the actual prudential and Treasury indicators. We just have to show that this report has been presented to the Audit and Governance Committee, and that has been agreed as part of our Treasury Management activities for last year.
Okay, I mean, on that basis, it makes sense. I do have one sort of question, and about the figures, which is to do with the borrowing envelope or the maximum borrowing amount. So currently our borrowing figure is about 15 million. I think what we're being asked to look at in the masses of detail of figures in this report is an operational boundary of borrowing of 50 million. So this is in the year that's just gone past. So I'm not quite sure whether we can change it because, as I say, it's historic. We're being asked to approve a borrowing allowance operational boundary of 50 million and a maximum borrowing figure of 75 million. I don't know if anyone wants to explain why on earth we might need that figure or whether it's the right figure for the council, because it seems a very big jump from the 15 million that we're actually borrowing. And I just wonder if it's, given all the issues with councils borrowing a lot and using it for various purposes, whether it's actually a low risk strategy.
Chairman, I'm very happy to comment on how those figures were arrived at. So this piece of work was done a couple of years ago, again through our Treasury Management Advisors, because we wanted to get some technical advice about what the headroom was for borrowing within the council. And we asked our Treasury Management Advisors to look at things like the size of the council, the size of our income streams, the size of our assets, looking at different ratios around things like financing costs. And we asked the Treasury Management Advisors to give a recommendation to members around what our maximum borrowing limit should be. And when that advice came back, that was calculated at 75 million. Now, what that doesn't mean, that doesn't give authority to myself or Mrs. Henstock or anyone in the finance team to go out and borrow that money. It is a limit that is set as part of the Treasury Management Strategy, but if the council were to take out any new borrowing, that would have to be a report that came to council and that all members voted on before any new borrowing was taken out. So it is, it's a statutory calculation. It's up to members whether you'd like to increase that or lower that. Again, we could always get that piece of work done again. It is quite expensive. That's the only thing I would say. I think last time it probably cost us about £7,500 to do that piece of work. And I don't think many of our metrics would have changed. You know, we're still the same size council. We've still got very similar borrowing limits, borrowing levels to what we had back then. Our assets are the same. Our reserves levels haven't changed significantly. So I don't think if we got that piece of work done again, it would give a very different result. But very much this is part of the strategy. It is up to members as to what you set those limits are at. That was just the technical advice that was given to members for, you know, what sort of things you look at and the metrics that you look at when setting a borrowing limit.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Brazil?
Yeah, I think Lisa's said that's an indicative figure about what we think it would be prudent, that's the level of borrowing that we could go at before alarm bells started going off. You have to remember that Woking Council, which is probably quite similar in size and numbers as we're concerned, I think has borrowings in the region of 2 billion. So you know, these are set in order to be, you know, prudent. But and obviously, as Lisa says, any extra borrowings that we want to do would have to come back to the full council, and we could decide whether we thought it was a good idea or not. I mean, you know, if we say we're going to borrow 50 million to put it on black at the casino, there may be some that say no, don't do that. Others, you know, less risk averse, might say that's a good idea, you know, but that would be members that would decide that. On the other hand, we may say that we want to do a massive investment in photovoltaics across all the buildings that Southampton District Council has, and that may cost a lot of money, and we may think that that's worth doing it, not least because we'd have a revenue stream to pay back the interest and the capital that we borrowed to do it. So those are the kind of decisions that we have to make. Just on that, I've always had it's been a bugbear of mine that there is a loophole within the system that allows, well, basically a decision to be taken without it to be properly scrutinised, let's say, to invest in commercial property without the checks and balances that I think should be in place. But that will come up with our investment strategy, and I think that comes to the council. That's reviewed annually, and I will certainly be arguing that we should change it, just tweak it a little bit. That means that any decisions that are taken go through due process and can always be, that it isn't just the executive or indeed officers taking that decision, that scrutiny has an opportunity to call that decision in so that it can be properly looked at by all councillors before any decision is finalised.
Okay, I mean, my feeling is maybe the council, thanks for that, Councillor Brazil. I mean, my feeling is maybe the council hasn't changed much since this recommendation was made, but the interest rates probably have changed from 0.1% or something to 5.5% or wherever we are now, 5.25%. So I think things have changed. If we're going to borrow another 50 million, it's going to cost us, 5 times as much in repayments. So just another question, is it up to this committee to set these limits, or who actually sets these or makes a recommendation around this headroom and overall borrowing limit, operation boundary?
So this is a Chairman, it's a full council decision in March, but this committee would make a recommendation to full council. So that will be a report that would come to this committee in March, at the beginning of March, to make a recommendation to council at the end of March, around the operational boundary and the authorised limit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have any thoughts on this, or feedback on what we should be looking at? Yeah, Councillor Nix.
As we discussed at the briefing the other day,
Oh, you're on. Okay.
I'm very happy with the limit.
Yeah.
Lisa has explained it very well. I'm very understanding of why we should have that limit, and that I'm happy that full council would have to authorise any borrowing.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other views? No? Okay, all right, so thank you very much for that discussion then. All right, let's leave that as it is. So we're going to, unless there are other points here, we're going to move to the motion to approve the prudential and treasury indicators and note the report and the additional income generated of 1.02 million. Well, I'm happy with saying approve based on, I mean, it doesn't seem to make very much difference. I don't know if someone wants, does anyone want to change it? Doesn't really make much difference. I just didn't understand why it's different to all the other things. But let's move on that. And is there a proposer? Yeah, Councillor Nick, seconder. Yep, all Councillor Hancock. Got it. Okay, all those in favour? It was a... I think that was unanimous. Okay, good. Thank you very much. All right. So we'll see more of that in the next. So when actually do we see the next version of Treasury Management recommendations or reports? Just so.
There is a mid-year report coming to the committee. A mid-year report, yeah. So a 6-month report coming to the committee in December, and that is alongside the report that is looking at our treasury management strategy and whether we want to change anything about how we do our investments.
Right. Okay. So we'll cover more then.
So we'll look at things like counterparty limits and investments.
So I think it would be very, very helpful to have, as Councillor Dennis said, the training before that, if it's at all possible.
Yeah, we can certainly
if we can
canvass members' views on which day would be best.
Thank you. Okay, great. All right, thanks very much. Okay, so let's go to the sundry debt, and I think we've got Councillor Brazil. What a job he's got today.
Yeah, no, thanks, Lee. Look, I hope you've all read the report. You can see what that it seems to be under control, and we're dealing with it. I think probably the main point is to look on page 63. Not 63, on 61, and you can look at how sundry debt, the bar chart there shows how sundry debt has increased or decreased through the ages, and I think we just need to keep an eye on that, really, that as long as we can keep that at a reasonable level and a historical level, then obviously things are are okay. I mean, the one caveat with that is obviously if we keep writing off massive debts, then we will keep it level. But of course, we will have written off debt, so that's not such a good thing. That wouldn't be so good. So inevitably, I think when in times of financial strain, debt is going to go up. I mean, that's just one of the sort of laws of economics, really. So just to thank officers for keeping it under control, really, and hopefully we can keep that as low as possible and get some money back. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Brazil. So I don't know if the finance team, I think we've got Mr. Pound here who looks after debt, have we? Well, I don't know if anyone wants to comment on any of this at all, just to give a bit more light to it.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Brazil. Absolutely. I think debt levels, as you can see, are, I would say, improving. When you look at the 12 months ago, September 22, we had over 500,000, and September 21, 430,000. So at the minute, at the end of August, we were looking at debt levels of around 392,000. A question I was asked was, how can we put that into context in terms of receivables? So we looked at what debtors we've raised over the last 12 months. That is in the region of £15 million. So as a proportion, you're looking at about 2.5% of your total debtors. So just hope that puts into context a little bit for members.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ms. Henstock. That's really, really interesting, because a debt level of 2.5%, I think, is in my experience, pretty good in the current climate. So what this seems to show is that the debt is very much under control as best we can. And there hasn't been any write-off, I don't think, from the report. So that's also good. And yeah, I mean, the cost of living crisis is hitting people that we deal with a lot. So, they're under pressure. And if we can keep it at this level or lower, then that's very good all round. Councillor Dennis.
This is probably my naivety here, but I'm just a little bit confused. There seems to be a disconnect between the report here about sundry debt and all the comments made in Agenda Item 8. Agenda Item 8 with all the recommendations about debt and collection. So, we're saying it's under control, but that's not the impression I get from Agenda Item 8. So
Yes, okay, good point. Do we want to, I don't know, who wants to comment on that?
Shall I go first? So this report is only looking at our sundry debt. It's not looking at the whole of the council's debt, which would include things like council tax, business rates, housing benefit. Sundry debt is more looking at things like estates management, environmental health, those other areas of debt. So yeah, they are different debt areas. With regards to revenues and benefits, we have recently had a service review on that, and part of the recommendations coming out of that was around the debt policy, which, as you say, is mentioned in a previous item, and that is something that we are looking to bring back to members shortly around our debt recovery policy. Thank you.
Okay, good point. Yeah. So is it true then that the way these different deadlines are they managed in a different way, or is there different?
They are managed through different departments.
Right,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, Councillor Hancock, I think.
The report refers to one debt that relates to a Section 106 agreement. Can we have confirmation of how much that debt is?
Yes. I'm just conscious that we are in part 1.
Yeah.
Very happy to answer that. It is the larger proportion of that 153,000. Yeah, so it's around about 100,000.
Okay, thank you. Oh yeah, Mr. Middlemas.
Yeah, so just on question of debt management and so on, and obviously we do audits in other councils and so on, and as a whole, I suppose, just to generalise, I suppose we sort of think generally that councils could place a higher priority on how they manage their debt. So, for instance, if you go into a sort of private company, commercial world, they would absolutely know how much debt they had, how old it was, and then put a massive priority on it. Whereas, as a general, as I said, perhaps over simplification, I would say that the councils don't necessarily have that focus. We are interested, I suppose, in understanding how much overall debt a council is holding, and so we've seen. So, for instance, Mid Devon Council has got a central debt management team. So, as soon as the debt is raised and goes over 3 weeks, it goes to that central management team who manage the debt, and there's quite a focused approach they take. Obviously, depending on the debt, there's different approaches to take. Whereas councils that have a bit more of a stovepipe sort of, the debt is managed in the different service areas, there's probably or possibly less focus on that. So that's just providing, I suppose, an overview. I mean, we have seen debts have increased over the sort of 5-year period. When you look back 5 years ago, and there was a massive spike during the pandemic, and certainly a period of time when government was saying, "Oh, don't collect debts," and a lot of focus on grant management rather than debt management. So there was a big spike, and that has sort of come down to some extent. But I do think it's important that, as the council understands the overall amount of debt and whether it's putting sufficient resource into managing that debt. And I think there's a general rule that if a debt is more than sort of 6 months old, then you're very unlikely to collect on it. Which goes towards the write-off policy, which I'm not sure the council currently has a current write-off policy. But anyway, so we are starting an audit on debt management, or we've got one in the plan. So we can go into a bit more detail on that later. But I'll end now.
Okay, I've got. Oh yes, Ms. Henson.
Yeah, sorry, could I just come back on that? I understand the point Mr. Middlemass is making, but I'm afraid I don't agree. We have very much focused resource looking at debt management. We manage the debts for 2 councils. Therefore, we have economies of scale in our revenues and benefits team looking at debts for council tax and business rates, and a centralised debt department would not work for us, in my opinion. We have the people with the knowledge around those areas chasing the debt, and our collection rates are very high. We were in the top quartile for council tax and second quartile for business rates. And obviously council tax and business rates is our highest income stream, and when members considered the medium-term financial strategy at the executive the week before last, we did actually put in there some very stretching targets around in-year collection and recovery for falling out of the revenues and benefits review. So actually we were saying that for next year we are targeting collecting at least 140,000 more in council tax, and at least 250,000 more in business rates, and that is on the back of the revenues and benefits review, and having very targeted resource, not only looking at debt but also looking at for business rates and council tax, going out there and visiting properties, identifying properties that aren't currently being billed for business rates and council tax, and that is helping us in our medium-term financial strategy close our budget gap for next year.
Thank you very much. That's very, very good, Mrs. Buckle. So I don't know. I mean, maybe you were talking more generally. I wasn't sure. But
yes.
your comments, I think, more general rather than being specific.
They were more general. So apologies if I was implying that we'd identified weaknesses for South Hams. Although obviously we'll be starting audit and looking at it and providing a more informed assessment. But as that was my sort of generalisation of what we found elsewhere for members' perspectives, I suppose.
Yeah, that is helpful, and I think it's good to be reassured that we're taking this matter seriously. What I wanted to understand then is, this is on sundry debt, so are we getting a report at some stage on the total debt position, or the debt that's not sundry debt? What do we call that then? Because this is only part of the picture. How do we know what's going on? How does this committee know what's going on in the other areas?
Yeah, absolutely. So the other main areas of debt would be around business rates, council tax, and housing benefit. And again, that's part of the revenues and benefits service review that we are doing. And the head of service is looking at, you know, what's the best point that we bring a report back on that.
So is it not? It's not a standing report to audit and governance, the debt in that area.
No, it isn't.
But isn't that then, as Councillor Dennis kind of hinted at a moment ago, isn't that needed? Don't we need to see it all together? Otherwise, we're sort of just seeing part of the picture. I mean,
Yes. At the moment, we report on that through the accounts, obviously through in terms of what our debt levels are. But that is something we are looking at with Jenny, who's our head of revenues and benefits. I don't know if Mr. Munley wants to comment on that at all.
What I'm interested in is not
specific report around that. Chair,
yeah, I think
and
what
where
I'm
that would
interested
go.
in is trying to see if that report should come to this committee. I think, you know, what is the level of what are the, if we're talking of 15 million in sundry debt, what sort of figures are we talking about in the other areas, roughly?
So in terms of council tax, we collect about 80 million.
80 million.
80 million.
Right,
Yeah,
so we're getting a report.
We're
Getting a report that's looking
well.
at debt of 15 million, but not a report that's looking at 80. Please.
Thank you, Chair. One of the reasons, so originally we used to
receivables.
We used to have all this information in one report, and I actually made an argument that it should be a separate report, and I have no problem bringing it to the committee. The reason why is because the sundry debt is, in some ways, is dwarfed by the council tax and business rates and housing benefit, and actually this allows you to focus on how the council is doing collecting on sundry debt. In terms of bringing a separate report with the other debt, that was always in the plan. Whether it comes to this committee or not, I'm happy for it to come to this committee. I have no problem with that.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Dennis.
Sorry, I just an earlier suggestion of mine was that we looked at there be a report on this the new enforcement agent contract, and I just wonder if it could be combined with that for the next meeting.
Is that possible? I guess could be.
Yes, I need to speak to the head of revenues and benefits in terms of when they think they will have that work done, because the lead-in time for reports for a December committee, we would have to have the work done by really the end of October. So yeah, I can certainly speak to them and see if it would be ready in time for then.
Councillor Dennis.
Sorry, me again. It obviously just says in that agenda item 8 that the contract will be retendered in 2023. So if we've got a meeting in December, presumably it will be done by then.
Sorry, I think there are two different things. So the December 2023 is around us looking at bailiffs and enforcement, an enforcement contract. So that is one area of work. Another area of work is around a debt management policy. So they are two different areas. And certainly the retendering of the enforcement work, yes, that would be done by the end of the calendar year. Yeah.
Councillor Dennis, are you comfortable with that? I'm not quite sure whether we're getting to the answer you want to get to, are we? No, that's okay, don't apologise.
I was just trying to look back, and I thought there was a new sort of plan that was also being proposed to be done within a corporate debt policy, in progress of a corporate debt policy being developed during 2023/24.
That's,
so,
I think, yes, I think.
Okay, correct.
Yeah, I think what Steve was saying. Okay, so what I'm thinking here is that just to repeat what I was trying to say, or clarify what I was trying to say before, the total receivables in sundry debt is 15 million, but the total income on council tax and business rates and other things is way higher, 80 plus million. And I would have thought that this committee would see both of those. Otherwise, we're just getting part of the picture and the smaller part of the picture. So my request then is that, I know you're thinking about this, but my request is that we have a report on debt on the bigger part of the sum, on the other collectibles, receivables, at some point. And I mean, when you say it's being considered, I mean, can we not request it from this committee?
Yes, Chair, you can. I'm just wondering whether the March committee would be the best place because you're nearly at the end of the financial year, and you would be, more or less right the way through the year, so you could see what collection rates are looking like. I think probably December would be too early.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that seems fine. Are people happy with that? Is it a good suggestion? Do we need to make a note? We're requesting the report on the bigger debt to come to this committee annually, but it's up to officers to say when it should fit into the work schedule. Yeah, can we add that? And request a report whenever, because at a suitable time on the council tax and business rates and housing debt position. I mean, what we've heard is that you're handling it well, which is great, and that it's being reviewed, which is good, and that it's being updated. But let's see what the figures are. All right. So with that, I'm going to move the recommendation. Are we comfortable? I'm proposing it. Is there a seconder? Councillor, all three. Councillor Dennis, just not Councillor Hancock. Councillor Dennis was nearly first. All in favour? Okay, that's then done. All right, good. Thank you very much. That's very, very good progress on that. Buildings maintenance progress update. Councillor Abbott has been waiting patiently.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for this.
Just about.
So this is an issue ongoing over quite some time, and you can see that in 1.1 we're looking back as far as December 2020. But this is partly related to the reallocation of staff to the waste problems and the recovery that the staff were able to contribute to. So the solution is overdue, but it's underway. Personally, I've had a small insight into the software that's contributing to this solution. We have a very mature geographical information system, which is a digital mapping system with a large and varied and interrogatable database, and that does offer a variety of untapped resources which we all could use more widely. And two other programs, Concerto, which I know less about, and PropTech, which is a new one, and they're supporting this development. So you can see in 1.2 that we have 5 issues which have been nominated and are extant, but that all of them have a nominated paragraph in section 3 where we are starting to make progress. So it is my proposal that you ask us to give this report a more complete answer later on as we draw this together. So any grown-up questions, of course, I defer to my colleague here.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. I don't know whether, Mr. Molyneux, you want to give a little bit more information.
Just a bit of background to what Councillor Abbott said, really, in terms of the waste issues. So when we had the waste issues, we at that time didn't have a waste team. So when we realised that we had to then, because the waste was all an outsourced service, so we took pretty much all the management resource that was responsible for grounds maintenance, buildings maintenance, and that side of the business, and effectively took near enough all of that management capacity and plonked it and said, right, you're now going to fix the waste issues that we've got. So that really set us back in terms of tackling some of these issues. And we're now at the point now where we have the waste service, we have a waste management team, we're in the process of recruiting and finalising the structure around the community services team, and that will give us the capacity to drive through a lot of this stuff. I know that the leader was keen to see the strategy, and we've, as the report says, that will be coming to the next executive meeting. So we are on with that, because ultimately, if you read the audit report, the strategy drives what work you should be doing, and without the strategy, you don't know what work you should be doing, which is what the audit report basically said. So we are on with that, as well as tackling the issues around the workforce and the management of the team. So we're tackling it head on, really. That's all I would say.
Okay, thank you very, very much. I think this written report was partly prompted by a suggestion from Councillor Brazil that we have it in writing. I don't know, Councillor Brazil, if you've got any questions.
Yeah,
or
no,
if this is
think
what you wanted.
I think the main thing is that audit in two successive internal audit in two successive reports had flagged up the fact that we didn't have an asset management plan, or a proper asset management plan for the Southampton District Council. I think that's a very serious issue, and was concerned that when it was reported last time, we had a verbal update, and then it comes back again, and we get still an exactly the same problem. So I'm hoping that now we've got this written report, it also, as it says in the written report, an asset management plan will be coming to executive on the 30th of November. So, we've now got something in writing that we can say, well, why isn't that there, or it's good that it's come. So that's why I wanted it in writing, because I thought we'd allowed it to slip before. Appreciate what Steve says about all the management capacity was moved over to waste. But, an asset management plan for an organisation like this is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Brazil. Okay, are there any questions or comments from members on the committee? I think one thing I've heard requested is that we have an asset register, basically a list, and I don't know if that exists yet. I actually asked one of the officers for it, I think in the first week, because I thought, what do we own? I just want a list of things that we own. Do we have that yet? Maybe I could ask that, please.
So we do, and it's a bit like what Councillor Abbott said. In GIS you can view it, but it's not the easiest. It's not very accessible. I'll refer to paragraph 3.3 in the report that talks about how we're going to categorise the assets by the council's themes, as it were, in terms of its strategic priorities. So we'll be able to drill down housing assets, operational assets, and have that. And the idea, and Councillor Abbott has been working with the GIS team to make that more accessible for all members, so that we will have all that information. We have it, just not very accessible at the moment. That's the challenge that we've got.
Okay, it's good that it's accessible, but will it only still be in a GIS, or will it be just a list of assets in a spreadsheet, a table, or written report? Or is it going to be, totally graphically based?
No. A GIS, you can get reports out of that, and you can request subsets on the theme that you are looking for. But it's also not hidden. It's one of the bits of software to which we do have access. We just generally amongst us don't tend to access it, but it is there, ready to use. I have it sitting with an icon on my laptop, and you could do too. So even though I was using it, I didn't know that there was a separate marine set of assets, and so it is a process of discovery and seeing what the opportunities are, and we need to keep asking these questions because otherwise people are working with the data in their own areas, but we're not necessarily seeing the reports. But it is all readily available.
Great, Councillor, thank you very much. I have to say it again because I didn't have my button pressed. And Councillor Dennis.
Yes, it is readily available, but as new members, it's not something we were signposted to. I asked about it specifically and had a one-to-one session on it, but I still don't think the majority of new ward members have been even introduced to that system. So if we could make a note of doing that, that would be great. I know the session that I had was recorded with the intention of spreading that out, but I don't think it has happened. And secondly, am I right in thinking that there's some mapping of assets still to take place onto that system, such as, you know, smaller items like bins and benches and things like that?
So the bins are there, and it's been a little local project of mine to work on benches. And these seem like the inconsequential elements of life, but if you're walking up the hill with a shopping bag, which us men do occasionally, then we're very glad to have a bench. And not only is there, I'm trialling the system, of course, parochially, but I would like it to go out to see if other members can help on something like this, because I imagine it would be difficult to get. I won't go down that road. So there are also opportunities for further. Now, can I say this?
What?
Conversation on the back. Okay, so no, it wasn't.
And so there are
Councillor
opportunities, maybe, by involving our residents to further that resource. And once they exist, then they'll be in the management system, and we can make sure that they are maintained over a period.
Okay, thank you. Well, I've got some councillors with questions. I think Councillor, I'm not quite sure who was first. Is it Councillor Dennis again? Yeah. Councillor Dennis.
Sorry, I'm getting into the sort of minutiae here. But you said bins are all mapped. They're not. I know of bins that aren't mapped, so there's still some work to be done there. And I don't know if the work is happening or if that's reliant on us to be doing that. In terms of benches, specifically my issue was with memorial benches and where we've agreed to allow memorial benches as a council, and what maintenance policies are in place regarding those, and when they disappear like they've done in my ward. So thank you.
Okay, Steve.
The only thing that I was going to go back to Councillor Dennis's first point in terms of, I agree in terms of the GIS system, we use it almost as an internal tool, and I think that we should be using it much more as an external resource and a member resource. It's almost used as a tool for officers, and it should be a tool for members of the public, for members, and that's where we want to get to.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, let's sort of move on from this, I think. But I think what we're saying in summary is that there is progress. It's good that there's going to be a report to the executive in November. But I think this committee is sort of still a bit unsure about whether we've got easy access to the information we want as members and for the public. And I think, you know, we need to just bear that in mind. And I would ask, you know, the officers, if we're going to base this on GIS, is it the right system? Is it fit for purpose for members of the public and for all of us to see and use it? Did you have a question, Councillor Nick?
Just very quickly, can that, if that session that Councillor Dennis was talking about was recorded, could we have that cascaded down to the rest of the members, please?
I will either ask that we can do that or arrange for a separate training session for members. So I'll do one of those two things.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so I think with that, let's agree to this then, or put forward this recommendation. Note the work being undertaken to address the audit report, and to agree to defer the feedback until Q1 24-25, which I imagine is a May meeting, is it? When is Q1 report? I mean, when?
Generally June, Chairman. Yeah.
Okay, June. All right, so we're going to come around to this next summer, roughly speaking. Okay, Oh, Mr. Middlemass, yes.
So that relates to our follow-up audit. So obviously there's an audit in our plan to follow up the work. So we're proposing to defer the actual audit follow-up to Q1 of next year, because obviously all the work that officers are doing, we are involved in that, obviously, and can see what they're doing and then feeding into it. But we just think there's no point in doing a formal follow-up to confirm the assurance level until that work is substantially done, which is why we're proposing to do it in Q1, April, May, June next year.
Yes, okay, thank you. That is clearer now to me. So it's the follow-up internal audit. I think, maybe can we just add the word internal audit so that it's actually clear for everybody, me included, what we're meaning there. Yeah, that's helpful. Good. All right, but in the meantime, we will still see the feedback from the audit action tracking, where there's still some, where buildings maintenance will be included. We're not taking away those previous recommendations that need to be done. Is that correct? I'm seeing nods at the back. Okay, good. All right, so I'm happy to propose this. Is there a seconder? Yes, Councillor Nix, you're too late there. All in favour? All right, thank you very much. Okay, so we should take this in order, I think. So we're now taking the work plan, and is that the right way of doing things, Amelia? I'm leaving item 14 to the last. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so item 13 then, the work plan, and I think there'll be some debate about this. So who's proposing, thank you very much, Steve. Who's proposing the work plan topic? Is it, yes, Mrs. Buckle, I think, perhaps.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very
yes,
much.
I can present the work plan. So I think we are adding a few items into that, aren't we? That we've captured earlier in the meeting. So, for example, the March committee would have their corporate debt policy and revenues debts. Those are debts from business rates, council tax and housing benefit. And I think, Chair, we did ask for a verbal update on markets to come back to the 7th of December meeting.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we've minuted from a previous meeting in July that we wanted a report back from markets. I don't know if we're happy with the verbal feedback or not. I mean, leave it, you know, are we? What does the committee think about that? Is that sufficient? Yeah. Okay. Then let's have a verbal feedback on markets in December. All right. And we're adding some things in March. Yes. We're adding, I think, in March we're adding an audit on car parking. Aren't we adding a line on car parking?
Chair, I think that was part of the internal
Oh yes,
plan,
you're
so
quite
I think
right.
That was
I beg your pardon. That's
Mr.
it.
Middlemass, wasn't
yeah.
it?
Okay. Good point.
Thank you.
Right, but we're adding some report on debt. Okay, so thank you. Okay, are there any questions then on the proposed work plan for audit and governance for December and for March?
Chair, I think we're adding an internal audit recommendations tracker into the 7th of December meeting as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good point. Yep. Okay. Yes.
I mean,
Councillor Rake.
is it worth making the items 8 and 9 of the December meeting kind of conditional on having had the training session on treasury management first? It seems that if we don't manage to arrange that before those items, then we're working with one hand tied behind our backs.
Yeah, we're certainly working without all the full information. I don't know whether it's whether we need to do it by a certain date for officers' sort of progress and process.
Chair, through you, the mid-year report, that's very similar to the report that you've just had on the 31st of March position. So that one's probably all right without the training, and we would need to bring that one to the 7th of December meeting. But the key one, I guess, is item 9, the review of the investment and treasury management strategy. That could be pulled forward to the March meeting if we can't rearrange the training. But if members are happy not to have the training on a Thursday, then that would significantly free up a lot more dates.
So, yeah, okay, I think I know, well, there are some people who've got day concerns. I think you've got do you have days that you can't make? Some people have days, I think, Councillor Dennis, you've got day. No, you can be flexible too, and maybe we can all be flexible.
Thursdays are generally the worst day for me, Chair.
Okay, good. Good, that's excellent, good to know. Councillor Dennis.
Sorry, I think it's because I can't remember exactly what was said, but when does the Freeport Task and Finish group, does that need to come back in as well?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Yes, it does. Thank you for reminding us. The Freeport Task and Finish. Wow, we really haven't quite done this document. The Freeport Task and Finish, which was going to be in this meeting, needs to be added also. I've run out in December. Yes, well spotted.
Chairman, I think that report is going straight to the executive on the 30th of November.
It is, but I mean, should it not be? Should this committee not have a chance to provide, have it on the agenda and provide other feedback? I mean, maybe we don't need to. Yes, Mr. Powell.
Well, I think what was originally proposed would be that today you propose to change the terms of reference for the group to report back to the executive for the 30th, and then it would be for the executive then to review that report and make any further recommendations, which could include something to come back to audit and governance. That would be the sort of normal procedure. You know,
Yeah, I
appreciate that creates a bit of an issue, but
yeah, I think maybe what's in Councillor Dennis's mind and mine as well is that, you know, this committee hasn't had a chance to really discuss it. As people who aren't on Task and Finish haven't had a chance to really discuss it and ask questions. But I mean, if you tell us, is that not needed because it'll go to the executive?
well, obviously the committee the report will be a public report and it will go to the executive. So and members are welcome to attend the executive and comment. I suppose it's about expediency, isn't it? Because of the date of getting it to the 30th. Yeah, that would be the normal way of dealing with it, Chair. That's what I'm explaining, really.
Okay, Councillor Dennis, you happy with that?
I just couldn't remember what was agreed. That was
Yeah.
all. So I was
Well,
merely
it keeps
reminding
changing.
you that it had been mentioned. So
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
fine.
So I think do we need to officially agree then to change the terms of reference so that it doesn't come back to this committee? Do we need to have that as a motion then? Could we put that as a motion somewhere?
Yes, Chair. I think that'd be the best way, and then it's clear that the terms of reference have changed, and it will go back to exec on the 30th.
Right. So let's add a motion then, please, to change the terms of reference of the Task and Finish group on Freeports to once the report's been agreed by that group to present it to the executive in time for their November meeting, the 30th of November, I think. Okay, thanks for reminding us of that. Okay, so I've moved that. Any seconder? Councillor Dennis. All in favour? That's agreed then. Okay, so some other small points for me then, which is not changing the order of this, but I think we should accept the suggestion then, if we can't do the training, we should probably be sensible to move point 9, the Treasury Management Review of Strategy, because we're going to be more educated and knowledgeable to comment on it after we've done the training. Just going back a little bit, the Strategic Risk Register and Risk Strategy. Now, in one of the July meetings, we did agree that members could feed into that the development of the risk strategy if they wanted to. No one's put forward anything, as far as I know, in writing, which is the way we originally suggested it. I did float an idea that we might want to have a chance to meet and discuss that, or to meet with officers. Is anyone interested in doing that, or are we happy just to carry on doing it by email as we are? Fine, sounds like we're carrying on, we don't need to change that. And St Anne's Chapel in December. So my thinking on St Anne's Chapel, just to give you a bit more information, is that this should probably be looking at the investment and the cost of St Anne's Chapel, and the cost effectiveness or the value for money for that compared to other options for affordable housing that we may have had or may have in the future, so that we kind of take the lessons of whether it was a good thing to do, or whether it's a policy that we should replicate in the future. So I'm thinking that we, in the meantime, between now and December, sort of decide how we're going to run that. You know, maybe some people might volunteer to be part of that. I think we're going to call it a task and finish group. And then we formally look at the terms of reference in that December meeting, so that we can start working, you know, soon after or in January. So last time we just sort of asked if anyone wanted to do it. Should we do the same thing again? Does anyone want to? Right, I got Councillor Hancock hand up first there, and Councillor Nix, two people keen, because I know it's in very close to you geographically. All right, so good. Anyone else want to do it? Because we probably need at least three, don't we? And yep, Councillor Oram. All right, which is not that. No, it's not your area at all. What am I talking about?
No, but I'm looking after housing.
But you're looking after housing, and there may be other housing that's being developed nearby. Okay, and Councillor Oram. So we've got three members that are interested in that. So I think, would one of you want to sort of take the lead and help write the terms of reference, and just agree it with the others, and sort of think about the meetings and think about how you're going to run it, just like we sort of did. I did on Ask and Finish for Freeports. I saw your hand go up, Councillor Hancock. Did it?
I saw it, Chair.
It might take a while because I'm exceedingly busy, but yes.
Okay, but you've got till the 7th of December. Right, okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Hancock. And if we find anybody else that's going to do it in the meantime, Councillor Yardy is very keen on this too, I know.
Well, we should ask him if he'd like to join.
Yeah, okay. So we've got three, and also Councillor Preswell, I don't know if you want to comment on this, if you're interested in joining this.
Yes, I don't mind particularly. Again, it's time management, but yeah.
Okay.
You can put me down.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Because I think it's better to have four, just in case people can't make it. Three's a better number for good discussion. All right. So we've got Councillor Hancock, Oram, and Nix, and Preswell. Okay, great. So we'll then in December look at the terms of reference and just discuss how we're going to do it and what we're going to do. Okay, then in March, are there any comments in March? I don't think so particularly. We're going to add the debt position, the broader debt. Is there anything else we need training on then before this? I see there's things like the budget book, the audit plan for the other accountants.
I don't think so, Chair.
Okay, good. All right, Councillor Dennis.
Just a really quick question. What is the Ombudsman annual review letter?
Good question.
That's just a letter we received from the Ombudsman, which sets out how many complaints they've received and what's happened in terms of the investigation around those complaints, whether they've been, gone through the full investigation and any situations where the Ombudsman has found council guilty of maladministration and the penalties, for want of a better term, as a result of that.
Okay, good. All right. I think also there was a suggestion in July that we input some ideas into the 2023-4 accounts and the format of the annual statement. So I know, Councillor Rake, you were keen to sort of contribute to that. I'm not quite sure how, again, we're going to do that. Maybe we'll discuss that in December or in. But what's also in my mind is that we don't want to be too late in feeding in ideas, because you're going to start that work in January, aren't you? Yes. Right. So
meeting in January.
we could meet in January then, a separate meeting in January on that. Okay, that would be a very good idea. You happy with that, Councillor Rake? Is that good?
Yes, I do wonder. I think I raised the possibility of that being preceded by a kind of informal workshop rather than a sort of formal meeting, just so that we can understand better what if there were any sort of particular issues that the councillors had with the format and presentation of the accounts. But
that sounds like we're having two meetings then.
Yes, that's my suggestion.
Well,
you said I was keen, and that's how keen I am, Chair.
Okay, well, let's sort of take that separately and think about the right way of running that, so it's good use of time. I don't want to use too much of officers' time, because but at the same time we need a way of giving putting forward our thoughts and ideas. So let's discuss that. But provisionally, we'll start with the meeting in January at a time that officers feel comfortable with. Okay, right. So we'll move on from that. I don't know if
need to discuss dates.
Dates. We need to discuss dates of these meetings now. Right, Amelia, over to you then. What do you think on the dates? Because 7th of December is not such a good date, is it?
Yes, we need to move the 7th of December and 7th of March meetings. So the proposed dates I've got for December to move to is the 14th of December or the 21st of December. And for the March meeting, we move to the 28th of March.
So the 14th or the 30th for the December meeting. Do we need to?
14th or the 21st.
Oh, sorry.
You'll be on your own on the 30th.
No, because the 30th was a date that was. Of course. Okay. Right. Yeah. Well, what do you want people to say here?
I moved to the 14th because the 21st is getting quite
I'd second
close
that.
to Christmas. And we're here on the 14th anyway, aren't we?
Full council.
For full council?
Yes, there's a full council.
Oh, sorry. There's a supposed Christmas lunch as well on the 14th. Will we be finished in time? We haven't finished by 12 today.
We will if there's lunch.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll maybe start at 9. Right, so 14th of December then for that meeting. And right, the second meeting then?
28th of March.
28th of March. Okay. It's a day before Good Friday. People may be on holiday, but we're still okay with that? All right, so let's move the 28th of March. Okay, good. All right, good. Last 5 minutes or so, we will move, thank you very much, Amelia, move to the last part of the agenda then, which is the, what did I say? Yeah, thank you very much. I'm not going to... Investment properties, yes, so it's a different bit of paper. Thank you very much. Right, so how do we handle this? All right.
So that'll be moved from public to private.
No, goodness. Right, thank you. Division of the agenda, that in accordance...
You don't need to at the moment. It's only if you go into the appendix that you need.
Okay.
So if people want to talk about figures, so that is from...
Can you press your button, please?
Sorry, yeah. So it's okay unless you want to go into the more specifics
actual details of numbers, which is Appendix 1. So Appendix 1 is restricted. The report itself is not.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brazil. So what we're saying is, well, what it says to me on agenda item 14 is not for publication. So
Sorry, Chair, that only applies to Appendix 1.
Oh,
so it says not for publication, but as the leader said, we can debate the report, and it's only if we go into the figures around the valuation that we'd need to go into.
Oh, okay.
Part 2. It's the valuation bit which is exempt information. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's start then without going through the exempt part of it. So the recommendation here is a committee note the valuation figures, right, of the council's 2 investment properties and the rental income being received. I mean, I'm sorry, I find it hard to actually make any statement about this really without looking at the figures.
Well,
do you want
to just say? I mean, what I would say is, you know, it's clear within there. You can say you don't think it's enough, or you think it's too little. You don't have to talk about specific figures. Okay. I mean, what I would say is that if you look at our 2 investment properties, obviously one is a lot better than the other.
Okay.
The disappointing thing is that the second one is that we did it relatively recently, and yet the return on investment is appalling, quite frankly. We'd be getting a lot better money. I mean, interest rates have gone up now. We just borrowed that money and stuck it in a bank.
Right.
But
okay, so that's a fair point. I think let's.
But, I mean, we're just noting it. I mean, it's, you know, we can't do anything about it unless you.
But again, it might influence further decisions.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll give Mrs. Buckle a chance to open this, or to make some initial comments, and then we'll take other questions, and maybe Councillor Brazil come back to you if you don't mind.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so the council has 2 investment properties which are set out in the report. There was a very recent property acquisition in Dartmouth that was made in December 2019. That was for a purchase price of 4.7 million. And the council is generating a return on that investment. That return is about 1.3%. At the time, there was an investment strategy in place, which looked at the returns on investment, and the strategy was saying as long as that investment was over 1%. Obviously, at the time, interest rates were very low, borrowing costs were also very low. So back then, you know, base rates were down at 0.1%. That investment, the rental income that the council is receiving, is paying for the borrowing costs. So it's paying not only for the interest rate, but it's paying for the capital repayment. And I know it's a long-term investment, but in 50 years' time, the council will own that asset outright, and the rental income will be all rental income for the council, and there wouldn't be any debt being repaid. Also, it is hoped that, you know, over the next few years there would start to be some capital appreciation on that asset. That hasn't been taken into account in the investment return. I know we haven't seen that at the moment, but, you know, property markets over the longer term generally do go up, and that property consists of a retail unit, but also some flats as well, which are above the retail unit. So the report in the public domain does set out that those 2 properties together have generated net income for the council of 652,000. But the large part of that is due to an historic asset which the council owns, whereby we own some land in Ivy Bridge, and that is let out to a retailer. And there's no borrowing on that second asset, that historic asset. And we are required, Chairman, to make an annual fair valuation of those assets. So when Mr. Murray was talking about the amount of work the external auditors have to do on the assets, they would do a significant amount of work on these 2 assets. And that's what they were saying about, because the changes in valuation don't impact on us. They don't go through our income and expenditure account, not like it would if we were a private sector firm. Local authority accounting is such that any changes in valuation go through the capital adjustment account and are reversed out. So therefore, the amount of audit work that they have to do, they are hoping that they can pare that back in future years. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Buckle. Okay, I think Councillor Hancock wanted to say something on this.
Thank you. On the property in Dartmouth, I'm through reading the report, I assume that those flats are being let out they're being sublet, in effect, at market rates.
We are not. We just have one transaction. So
one lease.
Yeah, one lease. So therefore, that is the rates that are set are for our tenant. We don't set that rate. We have a rate with
So
the occupant.
the tenant can set whatever rent he likes on those properties, on those flats.
I don't.
Yeah. But I would assume they are then.
It's not
Yeah.
to do with the council. We
Yeah.
just have one tenant.
Okay. So I think it's worth making the point then, Chair, that it sounds like through this investment, the council is in effect seeking to profit from the housing sector. It's worth pointing out, as we all know, that there's quite an acute housing crisis in the district, and much of the housing crisis is driven by rent seeking through property. That property is seen as something to profit from rather than something to house people. I'm quite uncomfortable that this is a business model that the council has also pursued in the past. I'm sure that it is making a return on investment, but I think if the council is letting property, it should be at social rates rather than market rates, or to whatever our tenant decides to charge.
Yeah, okay. Interesting point, because obviously we can't change it at the moment, but I think it's coming up for renewal in 6 years or something. So maybe that's a factor down the line.
Yeah, Chair, I don't think the council has any ability to have any say over what the tenant charges as a sublease.
Right, but if we renegotiate the lease, then in 6 years' time we could change. We can't change it now.
Potentially,
Potentially, yes, indeed. Okay, Councillor Rake.
Thank you. At my own peril, I'd like to disagree with our leaders slightly. I mean, it seems like the two properties we're comparing apples and oranges. There's no outstanding debt on. The return on the Dartmouth property gross is about 6.1%, I think. So so when it is at the stage that the Lee Mill one is at, it will be generating a similar sort of return.
That's a question, I guess, is it?
Sorry. Will it be generating a similar sort of return?
Thank you.
As you say, the gross yield on that is 6%. I think they are two very different assets. One is a piece of land that is sublet out, and one is a building and a retail unit. So I think it's very difficult to compare them. I think they're very different.
Yes, okay,
sectors.
But I think the point is, it depends why we're investing, right? So if we're investing for a social purpose, then that's explicit and we should understand it. And then we're not quite so, then the return is secondary. So did we invest in Dartmouth for social or economic or business reason that's not a pure financial reason? Because then that will affect our consideration of the investment return.
The primary objective of that investment, Chairman, was around economic regeneration. The council is not allowed to invest in properties purely for financial gain or financial yield. and to borrow monies from the Public Works Loan Board. It has to be yes, that can be an ancillary benefit, but the primary objective was around economic regeneration. And that was set out within the council's investment property strategy. So the council was very clear that it only wanted to invest in the district. That is different to what some other councils did, where councils invested outside of the area. For example, West Devon Borough Council did that. Some other neighbouring councils have done that as well. But Southampton were very clear that their members were very clear that they only wanted to invest within the district boundary. And Dartmouth was a property acquired under that strategy.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Presswell.
Yes, hello. I was going to bring this up at the next meeting, but other than, and I have to say I haven't read the council investment property strategy document, but are we able to have some kind of what your remit is of what's considered a good investment? This is with our governance hat on. There are obviously different channels of investment, but as well with my Green Party hat on regards, net zero targets, green investments, business scrutiny regards carbon levels. Other than your investment professionals at Southampton, I wondered if we were able to have a visual on the kind of remit that's considered, even buying property. Is there such a thing?
So, Chairman, yes, members of the previous administration did agree an investment strategy that set out within that strategy the criteria that members would look at when purchasing property. So that was around things like economic regeneration. It was around things like looking at the yield. Yes, there's no reason that we can't bring that strategy back to members at the March Council to have another look at that strategy. I think it was recently approved, probably about 18 months ago. But yes, we've got a new council, a new administration, and you may want to look at that regeneration and investment strategy and make any changes.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Buckle. Councillor Hopwood.
Thank you, Chairman.
You've been waiting patiently as well the whole time.
I'm always patient. I think it would be really helpful for members if, when there was an update on something like the investment strategy, the investments aligned to the strategy, and you had one earlier where you were talking about investing money and putting it into certain banks, and there's a strategy. I think it would be really helpful if every time a report came to committee that you put the strategy alongside the actual paper itself, and that may help you because there are strategies aligned to all of these decisions, but you don't see the strategies or know them as new members. So if you did that, aligned it with, I think that may be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. I think that would be an excellent idea for us to at least understand, does this particular investment or purchase or whatever, how well does it fit with the strategy? And then you can evaluate the returns. That I really like. That's something I hope we can do to help this committee, at least signpost where to find the relevant reports. Okay, so I think we're sort of running over time a little bit. Councillor Brazil, do you look like you'd like to add to your earlier comment?
I'll just say very briefly, look, I alluded to earlier about our investment and treasury management strategy. That comes to council again and has to be agreed by council. And as Sanna has said, we can definitely look at, maybe a more ethical or green or carbon zero investment plan if we are going to invest in things. Also, I said that there were occasions where I felt we did things that the council didn't have a proper say in, and that Dartmouth investment is a classic example. That was a delegated decision to officers in consultation with executive members that then came to the executive meeting where it was noted. It was not a decision taken at executive. So at no stage could that decision be called in or debated amongst all the members of the council. I think that's wrong. I think that's fundamentally wrong. because personally, I don't think buying, I didn't think it was a particularly good idea. Maybe I'll be proved wrong. I'll certainly turn up at the, the 2067 celebration of when we've actually paid off all our debt to to welcome the gross return that we might get then. But my point is that I do think we need to look at that seriously, because I don't think that decision with the last council was had enough input from elected members. My final thing to say about, we've also invested a lot of money in the Dartmouth Health Hub. I wonder if there could be a report on that about, because again, I think as David alluded to, it slightly concerns me that we're going to be looking to making money out of the NHS. I mean, maybe we're not, maybe we're just looking to do a return on our investment, but I think it would be important for us to understand what the figures are there, so we can think, well, actually we need to, because, it is an issue, I think, again.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Brazil. I think you raised, again, some important points about governance and decision making that we need to think about, but probably now's not the time to really look at that. And maybe we'll have a think about what to add or think about for a future meeting, because it sounds like there's more than one example of decisions being taken without maybe all councillors knowing. So if the committee's comfortable, I think we just pen that if we can and see at a later point what we might do. In the meantime, then, let's go to the recommendation and note this, shall we? And I'm sure it'll come up again, because we're not going to sell these things quickly. So we'll probably look at the figures. We'll probably look. So I'll move this. Is any seconding? Okay, thank you, Councillor Nix. Are those in favour? Any against? No, right, passed. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Very good meeting again. Lots of detailed points. So we'll see you next time and call the meeting closed. Thank you very much.